And welcome to Magic Numbers. This is episode number 168, and with great pleasure, it is time to dive into the Avatar The Last Airbender early 17Lands.com data. We're going to be talking about the new set, what makes it tick, and how does it work. Before we start, this is purely sponsored by the Patreon, so yeah, if you have some spare cash, please by all means join it. I think that there's going to be a Black Friday Patreon thing, and I'm hoping to be able to set it up so you can actually join at a discounted price, which is a good deal. I think you're gonna get some access to the slides and special channels in the Discords, questions of the week, that kind of stuff is all available through Patreons. And thanks to all the existing patrons, no new ones to report, but that's also fine. And before we move to the topic of the actual episodes, I always do have a preamble. And my today's preamble is that this set is a good example of how universes beyond sets can be beautifully incorporated into Magic while still retaining their lore and flavor. And I think that this set has been done amazingly. Like, first of all, I think that the bending mechanics are just great, and they feel very Magic the Gathering, but also they feel very Avatar The Last Airbender. And I think that if they are going to make a lot of universes beyond sets, which seems like that's going to be the case, I would dream of most of them being at least at the level of Avatar, because I think that it's a nice marriage of Avatar and Magic. And I think that that's what universes beyond should be, rather than trying to impose other intellectual properties on the Magic world. And I said the bending I really like. One card that I love specifically, I'm a sort of fan of Avatar. I'm not a diehard fan, but I watched all the series. I watched Korra. I've been rewatching it recently. Um, but this is the perfect example for me of the card that sort of links Magic and Avatar lore. The Legend of Kyoshi, the 6-mana saga. First episode is draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control, which is a very green effect. And we've seen that before in multiple sets. You just draw cards, but it's dependent on the sizing of your creatures, which is super green. Then we have the second chapter, which is, first of all, Earthbound X, where X is the number of cards in your hand. And then that land becomes an island in addition to its other types. This is linking to Avatar, because Avatar Kyoshi separated her village, which was on the peninsula, separated it from the mainland, and created Kyoshi Island through the use of multiple types of bending. But also, I think that Avatar Kyoshi's characteristic attribute was this fan, and that generally the Kyoshi warriors are using to fight. But also, if you look at this is the fan that is your hand size that you use to earthbend, which is super nice connection between the mechanics of the game and the lore of Avatar. So I really love how they managed to solve it, and how it's flavorsome for those who are interested in Avatar, and also how it's flavorsome for how you play the game. Because if someone asks you, how much do you earthbend, you can just do the fan, and you are the Avatar Kyoshi at that moment, and you earthbend X, and you turn your land into an island, which sometimes might become actually useful. And there are many examples of like really nice flavors in this set. All the sagas are just great. All the sagas are amazingly done. The one about the cave, it's also nice, where two people, because the story is about two people, so you make two allies. They find this cave in a mountain, so you can find a mountain or a cave. And then through that, they learn how to earthbend. So the last chapter is you do some earthbending, because that's the story of how humans discovered earthbending, by learning from badger moles in the caves underground, when the two lovers that were forbidden were meeting together. It's again a beautiful story and a beautiful flavor kind of combination on all of them. I'm not even going to talk about the leaves from the vine. Unfortunately, card is not very powerful, but this is of course the one of saddest stories of the whole series, and I still have to cry every time I'm contractually obliged when I read the card and pass it on to someone else in the draft. And again, especially after Spider-Man, which I think one of the big issues was that this set felt so disjointed, and the flavors maybe were there. I understand some of the references to Spider-Man, and I understand some references to Spider-Verse, but it just did not have the same level of attention and care. And I think that what was missing from there was the sort of incorporation into greater Magic universe. When I think that in Avatar, despite the mechanics being completely novel, they drip magicness when you play them, and I think that's great. Also, it helps that in the recent sets, the frame of the Universes Beyond cards is the same as the frame of the Magic cards. I think that that was something that was mildly annoying to me in the previous iterations of Universes Beyond. I like Final Fantasy as a set, but I always felt that this frame looks wrong, and I think it's a great move to change it into a normal Magic frame, especially since we're going to see so many of those sets in the future. So I'm hoping that this kind of mechanistic integration is going to be a more commonplace in the upcoming Universes Beyond sets. And there are some that I'm looking forward, and there are some that I'm totally not looking forward. I already know that I'm not going to be a biggest fan of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles set, because I'm not that much interested in the property. I don't know what to think about Marvel, because on one hand, I'm still having a trauma from the Spider-Man. I took a hiatus, if you didn't notice. I didn't record anything for like a month. But on the other hand, I think that Dave Humphries is the lead design for that one. So I'm looking forward to that, because, of course, Dave Humphries always makes a banger, especially for the limited players. So that's going to be interesting. And I'm actually quite keen on Hobbit, because I'm a big Tolkien fan. And I'm weirdly interested in Star Trek. I know that a lot of people won't be, but I'm actually interested in Star Trek, because I always appreciated what Star Trek culturally has done as a science fiction series that sort of promotes my sort of kind of values that I think humanity should represent. So I'm at least going to be approaching it optimistically, and even if cautiously. So we'll see what the nearest future brings. For now, let's focus on the Avatar set, which so far I have enjoyed quite a lot. It's a great set, it's fun, and there's a lot of things to be done. So let's move on to start analyzing it. Okay, first thing is the color popularity rankings. And it's not like the most balanced set. The delta between the most commonly played color, blue, 23%, and the least commonly played, black, at 17.3, that's around 6 percentage points. This is quite a high delta. I think in Final Fantasy we had the delta of 0.3%, because all the sets were played exactly 20%, and like biggest difference was like 20.2 versus 19.9. It was insanely well balanced. This one is not that. But it's also not like extreme that we've seen. I think in some sets we've seen one color being played 25, even 26% of the time. So that's a big difference. Most popular, as I said, is blue, and then white close behind at 22.2. Red is sort of played as we would expect from a perfectly balanced format. In a perfectly balanced format, they all should be at 20. And then green at 17.8 and black at 17.7. And yeah, normally 17Lands users are very good in playing the most powerful color the most. However, this is not exactly the case in this particular set. White is the second best most played color, 22.2, but it has definitely the highest win rate at 57. The average win rate of the set is 55.9. White has the 57% win rate, and then no other color goes above the average win rate. They are very close with each other. So blue is at 55.8, red is at 55.4, green at 55.1, and black at 54.9, which is within 1 percentage points from each other. It's quite close, but white is definitely ahead of everything else. Also, blue is the most drafted color, and it does not have impressive numbers. So that's interesting. Bailey, stop it. Come here. Blue is the most played color. The win rate is not particularly impressive at 55.8. It's nothing wrong with that. It's around the average. But normally we see that the most drafted color is the one that also has the high win rate, and it's not the case here. Secondly, I think that black and green are quite close together in terms of the win rate, and much closer to blue and red than the popularity would suggest, which makes me think that if black and green are going to drop even further in terms of how they're being drafted, because I guess that white is going to increase in popularity very soon, I think that that might mean that those black and green decks are going to be much more powerful, because you're going to have access to better cards, because right now they seem to be slightly overdrafted, even though they are drafted less than average. Which means that I think that today it's worth for you to pay attention to those colors that are slightly underdrafted, because the win rates for those should be able to go up. And I think there are particular couple of color combinations that I think have a potential of doing better, because I think that looking at the data, people have not figured out just yet how to draft them properly. Is black the only color without a bending mechanic? Yes. Yes, black is the only color without the bending mechanic. And as such, I think it is basically destined to be a support color. Exactly. Okay. In terms of how many colors you draft in the format, around 60, how many? Around 60% of the decks are 2 colors or 2 colors and splash. Around 10% of the decks are 3 colors and 3 colors and splash. There is a bit of confusion because of how the data is structured, because there are hybrid cards, which means that sometimes a black-green hybrid card in a black-red deck will add additional splash color if you have the right mana sources that could potentially cast it for green, which means that there's a bit more chaos. I think it's more two-color than the data suggests, probably more like 70, maybe even 75% of the decks are going to be two-color. There's also like a good chunk of monocolor decks because of the monocolor payoffs that we're going to see some of later in this presentation. In terms of the win rates, it seems like the adding more colors is not particularly beneficial. So because of there's so many of those monocolor decks, I added the monocolor win rate data because there's enough sample size to actually trust it. Pure monocolor decks actually are having the highest win rate of around 60%. Then monocolors with a splash are around 58. And that's, of course, because monocolor decks don't lose to color screw, which will happen in some numbers in the multicolor decks. And that doesn't mean that you should basically force monocolor decks, because monocolor decks are not forcible. But if you see that a line presents itself where you can get monocolor decks and you get those monocolor payoffs as well, probably it's worth pursuing them, because even if you get 90% there, you can play a monocolor deck with a splash, and that's good enough. Two-color decks have 57% win rate, which is higher than the average win rate of the format. And two-color decks with the splash have 55.5, which is slightly less, but still quite acceptable. And then we see a drop of to 3 and splash color decks at 52.8, 52.7. So those multicolor decks don't do amazingly. And I think that also this is a product of early format. It's harder to figure out those multicolor decks. We don't know exactly which fixing is the best. We don't know exactly which cards are performing the best in multicolor decks. All those things need to be solved, and it takes more than a couple of days. Right now, we're still in this discovery stage. So don't think that it's impossible to draft multicolor decks. It's just we don't know. The data is not good enough to actually determine that just yet. In terms of the color combinations, popularity, Azorius is the most popular color combo at 15%. Second one is the mirror at 12.3. In an average world, I only look at the two-color decks in this particular graph. In a perfect world, average is 10%. So 15% of Azorius, that's way above what you should expect, which means that people are really, really hot on Azorius. And we're going to try to see in a second if that's a warranted. Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you, Lucy, for the information. I typed it very quickly and probably I did a mistake, but hopefully people figure that out. I can now claim that it was the test of my audience. If they figure out that Twitch without the T is actually Twitch, then they pass the test and they can get the seminar. If they didn't, well, unfortunately, they'll have to live without my knowledge. Lucy, you passed the test. Congratulations and welcome. So Demir is the second most popular, together with Boros at 12.3. And then we have Izzet and Selesnya at 11.1, both of them. And then the rest of the 5 color pairs are below the 10% average. So we have Rakdos at 9.2, Golgari at 7.8, Orzhov at 7.5, Simic at 7, and Gruul at 6.8. There is a methodological note here. I chatted with a couple of the game's designers, and well, they basically claim that Simic, in most of the sets, is planned to be a multicolor archetype. And I think that, well, at least in the current iteration of how they design sets, which means that Simic will always have lower numbers, and also probably playing Simic as a 2-color combination will often be a slight failure because they are designed to be multicolor. So if you're only using 2 colors, you're not exploring the full diversity of the Simic deck and all the full range that they're going to have available. I think that in this set, Simic decks should often be Timur decks, or maybe Sultai decks, depending on how you are going to build them, or maybe even the Shrine decks, if that is an option. And I think that Shrine decks are an option that is not necessarily terrible. And yeah, Gruul being the last at 6.8. Now, normally as well, 17Lands users are good in determining which colors are the best. And there is a good correlation between how often they're being drafted by the 17Lands users and what is the win rate on average. So next graph will be showing the win rate of each of those color pairs. And I kept the same order of the popularity. So if Azorius is the most popular, Azorius is going to be number 1 in the next graph in terms of the win rate, independently of if this win rate is actually the highest or not. Which it is. It is the highest, by the way. Azorius is the most winning color combination at 58.2. But Demir, which was the second most drafted deck, is definitely not the second in terms of the highest win rate. When we look at the 3 decks with the highest win rate, we get Azorius, Boros, and Selesnya, all 3 of them having white, which explains why white has such a high win rate. Demir and Izzet, the 2 other of the top 5 most popular decks, are actually number 4 and 5, so it's not terrible, but there is a significant gap between Demir, which is 4th, and Selesnya, which is 3rd. There's over 1 percentage point difference between those 2, because Selesnya has 57.5, Demir has Selesnya has 57.5, and Demir has 56.4. And then the other 5 decks are below the average win rate for the format, which is 56.4. Actually, Rakdos has the lowest win rate at 54.4, despite being drafted almost 10% of the time. This is going to drop down. The Overmaster, this data counts 2 colors and a splash. Yes, that's why the average win rate is 56.4, because 57 from the 2 color decks and 55.5 from the 2 colors and splash, and they average at they weight average at 56.4. So yeah, the splashes are counted in there on purpose, because some of those splashes will be due to the hybrid cards, and because hybrid cards can muddle the waters in terms of what is a 2 color deck and what is not, I decided to merge them. Of the sort of rest, the best win rate deck is Orzhov. So the 4th white archetype is actually 6th. So within the top 6 by win rate, we have 4 white archetypes, which again shows the dominance of white in this format so far. Golgari is doing reasonably well at 55.5. That's below average, but A good version of Golgari is still a competitive deck, that means. And Gruul also 55.3, despite being the least drafted. And I think that Lord of Ironforge in the chat said that both Demir looks overdrafted and Gruul looks underdrafted, and that's exactly the picture that we're going to see, where the difference between how Gruul and Demir is drafted is something like almost 6 percentage points. It's almost double, basically, and the difference in win rate is just around 1 percentage point. And Simic is at 54.5, but as we said, Simic probably should not be Simic. It should be probably a multicolor deck. Okay, so this concludes the part where I talk about the meta of the current format. Because I think it's good to give this overview. It's good to look at how the metagame is shaping and what is the bigger scale kind of picture of the format before we start going into individual cards and looking at each color pair, which we will. But normally, on this first episode, I start by looking at colors. And we're going to look at best bombs for each color, top commons and top uncommons, to give you an overview of which cards you should be you should be paying attention to. Now, I'm not going to show all the bombs for each color, just the top 3, if there is a top 3. And the definition of the bomb is having a win rate of 62% by game in hand win rate or more. Everything below is not going to be counted as a bomb. Oh, also, bombs are only at high rarity, despite some cards having a qualifying win rate despite being uncommons. I'm looking at you, Invasion Submersible. They are not counted as bombs, but they are still amazing mythic uncommons, probably because they fulfill the criteria of being a bomb while being an uncommon. So we start with white because I always go in Wooberg because I'm lazy. The white bombs. Well, we start with the number 1, the Legend of Yang Chen. This is one of those sagas that flip into a creature on the other side. And this one is a removal that is very weirdly worded, but very powerful because, well, you basically choose one of the permanents of the opponent controls with mana value 3 or greater, and you just exile it. That's as much as you want to do. Weirdly, you can also choose something with hexproof or indestructible, and there is no protecting from that because that ability does not target. Then you have the option of having someone draw 3 cards, and if they do, you also draw 3 cards, which sometimes you might actually go for it, because after that happens, you exile the saga and you flip it into a 4/5 flyer that has the ability, when you cast a second spell each turn, you can waterbend something, and airbend something. And obviously, if you draw those extra 3 cards, you are more likely to get the airbending next turn. Funny enough, if you airbend your thing, then you can basically guarantee that you have at least half of double spelling next turn. Second bomb that we have, and these two are just atrocious. These are like above 67% game in hand win rate, which is very, very high indeed. Second one we have is United Front. That's white, white X. Create X 1/1s, and then put +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. I mean, this card is clearly ridiculous. You draw it late in the game, that can just generate like, I don't know, 5 2/2 bodies and pump the rest of your team. Sometimes you just cast it for white just to put counters on every creature you control. It's super versatile, but it's always going to be a powerful effect. And the third one, which is still very high win rate, but just a notch below those, is Suki, Courageous Rescuer. It's 1 white for a 2/4 legendary creature, human warrior ally. Other creatures you control get +1/+0. And whenever another permanent during you control leaves the battlefield during your turn, you create a 1/1 white ally creature token. That only happens once. But, you attack, trade off with something, you get a 1/1 as a sort of consolation prize. And, before the set was released, we were making joking comparisons of the green-white hybrid Suki to Adeline, because that one, when it attacks, it makes tokens. And it has power equal to the number of creatures you control. So there are some similarities in terms of how the cards are organized to Adeline. But actually, when I think about it, on the power level and the function that it plays in the deck, the mono white Suki, this one is much closer to Adeline. It's like 3 mana, super aggressive threat that will take over the games. Like the one problem that maybe one knock against it is that you will rarely put it in harm's way and attack with it, but the bonus it gives to other creatures you control is just such a good thing. Don't you think? So I have a question in the chat from Metal Mario, and I will answer Metal Mario because it's Metal Mario. Do you think this format feels like a don't get caught in the middle format, similar to how Kaldheim was? You either want to be aggressive or over the top with bombs. I suppose that's true for Modern Limited in general these days. I do think that it is a definitely know what your plan is format. I don't think that it's over the top with bombs versus super aggro. I don't think that it's to that extent, but I think that there are several plans, um, and you should understand which plan you're adhering to. And I think that it's going to be much clearer when we're going to look at each color pair and see which cards are doing well and not so well in each of those color pairs to maybe at least get some speculation. I think that the true picture of this format will emerge somewhere in like a week or two when we will have better idea of how the streamlined deck looks like. But I definitely agree that this is a clear format where you have to know what plan you're representing, and aggro plan is one of those plans. I'm just not sure that if there are not more of those plans than just bombs versus a 5-color soup versus super aggro. I think that there are definitely more grindy decks that don't require rares at all, but they have a significantly different plan than some other aggressive decks. And yes, the chat already expressed their surprise with that, but the top white common is Yip Yip, a white mana for an instant lesson. Target creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. If that creature is an ally, it also gains flying until end of turn. It is very common for 17Lands data that early in the format, combat trick is extremely high in win rate. It's almost predictably reliable. There are several reasons for that. Aggressive decks are usually better early because they are easier to build, so people are much more comfortable drafting an aggressive deck early in the format. People are not yet in the mindset of playing around combat tricks, so they are much more surprising to the opponents, which means that their impact might be much higher, because if the opponent does not expect a combat trick, well, you're getting more from it because you often will catch them with their pants down. And all this accumulates. Also, they usually go late, so you have always access to them, which means that your best versions of the deck will without problem have access to them. And Yip Yip is definitely a beneficiary of that. But it is still a good card. It's a card that is good, but you can always get it in the draft. They'll always be there around the wheel. You can pick them. And it's also a card that you don't want like 7 copies in your deck. Unlike some creatures, which you will be super happy to have 7 copies of, even though they have a lower win rate. So yeah, Yip Yip is the top white common, but again, let's not put too much weight on that observation because this is a phenomenon that I've observed in multiple sets, and we're going to see actually a couple of more probably combat tricks before we finish that section. Second best common, and just very close, is Airbending Lesson. Basically the white repulse, and there is only a bit of hyperbole there. 3 mana instant, you airbend target non-land permanent, and then you draw a card. So you can basically bounce something into exile, and then opponent can recast it for 2, or you can bounce something of your own into exile, and you can recast it to recoup some triggers or to protect it from removal or something like that. Very multifunctional card that is also a lesson. And yeah, very high win rate on that one. And the third white common is Path to Redemption. That's the pacifism that you can, or arrest that you can, no, pacifism. Pacifism that you can sacrifice for 5 mana, and you create a 1/1 white ally creature token. If you do that, you can only do that on your turn. So you have to dedicate yourself to that. I have to say, I kept 5 mana to sacrifice it past my turn. and then tried to sacrifice it at the end of opponent's turn, and then I realized, oh no, it's sorcery speed only, damn it. I didn't have anything else to do, so I wasted 5 mana. I didn't feel great. I still won that game though, because Path to Redemption is actually doing its job. I think that removal in this set is, it's not that it's good, but there is not much of it in terms of quality removal. So if you find a quality removal spell, it's worth having it in your deck, because some of those creatures are really problematic to deal with. So these are the top 3 white commons. What are the uncommons that are the best? And it is an avatar set, so it's only suitable that Aang, the Last Airbender, is the best white uncommon. 4 mana for a 3/3 flyer, enters, it airbends up to 1 other target non-land permanent. And this is, if there's one knock against the design, I understand that this is for power levels requirements, but it's very inconsistent. Sometimes it's a non-land permanent, sometimes it's a creature, sometimes it's something else. So some of those airbending spells can deal with the earthbending lands, and some of them don't. And it's, you have to learn, and it's sometimes confusing whether, when you look at your hand, can I kill an earthbend land with that or not? Also, it has another ability: when you cast a lesson spell, Aang gains lifelink until end of turn, which is a nice bonus on it, because that really helps you to swing the race in your favor very quickly when you cast a lesson, and all of a sudden you swing for 3 in the skies and gain 3 life. I had those turns, and they were game-changing. The second best white uncommon is Earth Kingdom Jailer. 3 mana for a 3/3. And when it enters, you exile up to 1 target artifact, creature, or enchantment an opponent controls with mana value 3 or greater until this creature leaves the battlefield. And yes, this card can be awkward when you're on the play, because you cannot go 1-drop, 2-drop into Earth Kingdom Jailer. I mean, you can, but then you just play the vanilla 3/3, because it only kills things that cost 3 or more mana. So your opponent did not have a chance to deploy anything like that just yet. Still, that doesn't stop it from being a great card, and I think that white has so many creatures that can be played at different stages of the curve that you will always find a 3-drop or a 2-drop or something to play before Earth Kingdom Jailer, and then deploy it whenever it's the most beneficial for you. And then, and 3/3 stats on that kind of creature is unprecedented. Most of the time, they will be like 1/3s or 1/4s. That's as much as you will get from them. The 3/3 is huge. And yeah, planeswalkers cannot be jailed. Luckily, we don't have any planeswalkers in the set either. So for limited purposes, it's not important. Then at number 3, we have Water Tribe Rallier. 1 and a white for a 2/2, and it has Waterbend 5. So waterbending is this ability to spend mana or tap creatures or artifacts to pay for the cost. So it's like sort of like a ability, but with a mix of convoke and improvise. And when you do that, you look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card with power 3 or less from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And this is such a great value engine in the late game. Well, still, on turn 2, you can play it, and maybe you'll get one attack or 2 attacks with that. But I played green-white yesterday, and I drew so many cards from Water Tribe Rallier because I was an ally-heavy build of green-white. I built white boards, and then usually got completely blocked out by some large blocker. They couldn't attack because I had such a wide board. And Water Tribe Rallier was slowly accruing the value for me, and through acquiring that value, I was managed to break the board. My brain is not working today. Board stalls. I could break the board stalls by the value from Water Tribe Rallier, because over time I could get my 3/3 that pumps the team, maybe a flyer that could go over, maybe something that let me reliably earthbend until I built like a very, very big earthbending land. In so many ways, I could assemble something that would break the board stall. And, if I build a white board, because that waterbend ability is at instant speed, I was often able to use it twice a turn, no problem, and get so much value. I mean, a lot of the times I finished my games with just lands. I knew that I'm not going to draw anything, but I built such a huge board that it didn't matter anymore. Okay, blue. In terms of bombs, only two cards fulfill the criteria of 62 or higher game and hand win rate. One Shitong, the librarian, the blue X 1/1 flash flying vigilance. When it enters, you put X +1/+1 counters on this card, and then you draw half X cards rounded down. And it has also an ability: whenever an opponent searches their library, you put a +1/+1 counter on it and draw a card. And it's not nothing, because there is, I think, like 8 or 9 cards that search the library in the set. So sometimes you will be able to nab opponent in response to something that searches the library. But yeah, card is very good in limited. Side note, I do have my doubts if the card will retain its value in constructed. If you have those, I don't know. I think if I had those, I would have been selling them right now, because I think that they've reached the peak of their price. Unless you're super keen of playing them in modern. I've seen that people are playing them sometimes, but I don't think that it has a chance of retaining that kind of value. However, limited, a huge flyer looks extremely powerful. The vigilance on it is also impressive. And, early in the game, sometimes you will cast it like as a 3/3 flyer with vigilance, but then it sort of becomes the cat owl that draws your card, which is not nothing. But late in the game, it can become outrageously huge. So probably worth waiting and then casting it for big. You can cast it with flash, which means that most of the time you'll get at least one attack from it. Yeah, and it looks impressive. And, sometimes you will ambush something, which is even more impressive. Then the second one, we have the Legend of Kuruk. 2 blue for Saga. And the first 2 chapters are the same. Scry 2, then draw a card. And we used to have a card, Scry 4, and draw 2 cards at sorcery speed. And it was already one of the better cards in War of the Spark. Mind you, War of the Spark, not the most powerful set in the history, but still. And this one also later produces a 4/3 that will start producing 1/1s on top of those cards that you drew, which is amazing. And a bit slow, but this card is slow for constructed. In limited, it will still do the damage that it needs to be doing. And as I said, removal not that great in the set, which means that there's a good chance that the Legend of Kuruk will accrue the value and then stay on board, continuing to accrue the value. I've seen, so Lord of Ironforge wrote, looks like a friend of Kaito for standard, not good enough outside of standard. I've seen it's the third most played card from the set in modern at the European RC. But the most one was the red avatar, actually, which I don't know which deck uses it, but I assume one of the spells deck to draw 3 cards for 4 mana, one of the red aggro decks. In terms of the top blue commons, Lost Days has the highest win rate, and by quite a lot, by the way. By quite a lot. It has the highest win rate of any common in the set. I'm super thrilled because in the MTG Data Sciences poll before this set was released, I picked Lost Days as one of my commons to watch, and not many people did. So I'm looking positively that I might be in the upper half of the people that played the game this time. Lost Days is 5 mana instant lesson, and then you target a creature or an enchantment, and opponent can decide whether they want to put it on the bottom of their library or on top, but not on top, but on top, second from the top. And on top of everything, on top of everything, you also make a clue token. So it generates you some value that you can later accrue, either by water bending with the clue token, or water bending and sacrificing it, or just sacrificing it to draw a card. So a lot of value on that card. And this is a much better variant of the put something on top or put something on bottom. Also, importantly, with earthbending around, you also can sometimes nab opponent's land. And those earthbent land, they have protection from dying and they come back as a land. And they have protection from being exiled through something like airbending, because they also come back to the battlefield tapped. But they don't have protection against being put on the top or bottom of the library. So literally, you can turn your Lost Days into Doomed Blade that also stone rains them, which is quite a cool combination. And I think that in some decks, when you have firebending together with playing blue, That can happen very early and can completely derail opponents' game plan. And I'll skip a bit to the front. The same thing with Watery Grasp. That card is super good against Earthbending because sometimes you can just lock opponents' lands and creature at the same time. I played a game against someone. They had the green uncommon legend that Earthbends one whenever an ally comes, and they put their counters on 2 lands. I just played 2 Watery Grasps to tap out on the tapped on both of those lands when they were tapped, and basically stone raid my opponent to being on 2 lands, and they never drew a third one, or in this case a fifth one. And because of that, I just won the game because they didn't have access to mana. They could only deploy very small threats, and I was doing big things at that time already. And the second best blue common is it'll quench you, the 2 mana quench, which is counter target spell unless its opponent pays 2. It's also a lesson. And it's amazing because normally those quench variants, they really needed something extra to be good. And it turns out that being a lesson and maybe format specifics is just enough. It's one of the better cards in blue. And I think that, yeah, a lot of it is that lesson is actually quite a powerful addition. And maybe this is also something that Yip Yip is benefiting from. But yeah, a bit of a surprise to me that it'll quench you is so good. But well, we should learn and adapt. I was drafting it relatively high because I thought that 2 drops in blue are on the poorer side, and when the 2 drops are on the poorer side, the best 2 drop is usually quench. But my worry for that card was that maybe late in the game it would be completely useless. But I think that blue and red blue especially, they have enough of the looting rummaging effects that if you draw it'll quench you too late, you can actually get rid of it and do something with it. In terms of uncommons, blue has the mythic uncommon of the set, Invasion Submersible. The card has outrageous win rate for now, at least. It has 63 and a bit % game in hand win rate. This is 3 mana vehicle without a crew cost and also a 0/0. How can that be good? Well, first of all, when it enters, return up to 1 other target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. See, another case where it cannot touch the Earthbent lands. But it can bounce any kind of permanent to owner's hand, including yours, including theirs. And it, instead of crew, it has exhaust. Remember exhaust from Ether Drift? Well, it's back in the set, and then you can have different variants of those exhaust. Exhaust, importantly, you can only activate that ability once per game. Once you activated it, that one is locked. And this one has exhaust Waterbend 3, so it's either 3 mana or tapping 3 different things. And that when you Waterbend 3, this vehicle becomes a creature permanently, and you put 3+1/+1 counters on it. So it just becomes a 3/3 creature. It's a 3/3 mana war. And if it costs 3 mana, I don't think it would be a great card. But first of all, it comes to play untapped, which means that you can tap itself to Waterbend because you can tap artifacts or creatures to Waterbend. So that means that you only need 2 mana because you can always tap the Invasion Submersible. And there's definitely a ton of openings in blue where you can just play it on turn 3 and instantly Waterbend it to make it into a creature, say at the end of opponent's turn, and untap with the 3/3 creature in play. So for example, one of the other powerful uncommons in blue, Gran, blue for a 1/2. When it becomes tapped, you draw a card and discard a card. Well, if you play it on turn 1, play a creature, any creature, on turn 2, and then Invasion Submersible on turn 3. Well, you can tap Gran, Invasion Submersible, and the other creature that you had, and you can instantly exhaust the Submersible. Also, you get a loot from that randomly because Gran becomes tapped, therefore you get a loot. Another good carve out with that is Invasion Submersible together with the Fortune Teller, which is a 2 mana 1/3 that makes a clue when it enters the battlefield. And because it makes a clue, you can tap it and the clue and the Submersible to Waterbend. And this collection of small combos, of how easy it is to make it into a creature, makes it super close to a 3 mana 3/3 that is a Mana War. Mana War is already a sort of close to playable card. We had a version of Mana War in the Spider-Man set, and it was one of the better uncommons. And 3/3 Mana War is better than a 2/2 Mana War, which turns out makes this card pretty busted. So yeah, Invasion Submersible, don't ignore that card. It's great. Then the second best uncommon, and there's a big gap between those two. Invasion Submersible is just head and shoulders above everything, any other uncommon, really. But second best, and still very good, is Knowledge Seeker. 2 mana for a 2/1 with Vigilance. And whenever you draw your second card each turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Also, when it dies, you create a clue token. So sometimes if you play against an aggressive deck, you play the Knowledge Seeker on 2, you just block with it, get your clue, and happy with that. Sometimes if the game is more stally, you can actually make it into, like, I don't know, a 6/5 vigilance creature, which is huge. And then they have to deal with it. And even if they do, you still get a clue most of the time. So yeah. And then the third one, as I said, is Grand. That's this 1 mana 1/2, a legendary creature. And whenever it becomes tapped, draw a card and discard a card. And non-creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, as long as there are 3 or more lesson cards in your graveyard. So often it will, if you have it in your opening hand, often you will just be able to attack with it, loot something. Then if you have some water bending, you can tap it in different ways, or maybe some vehicles to crew. You can tap it in a different way to get some more loots. Over time, you're going to cast some lessons and maybe loot some lessons, enough to get those 3 lessons in your graveyard. 3 lessons in your graveyard is an important feature for other cards. And also when with Grand doing that, you'll be able to cast some powerful spells a mana cheaper. So for example, a lot of the time Lost Days is going to be costing 4, and that's a big difference paying 4 or paying 5 for that particular spell. Or It'll Quench You will cost only 1 blue, which means that you can sneakily counter some stuff when opponent is not expecting it. Oh, Yip Yip is the best friend of Grand. So much repetition, Lord of Ironforge. But it is also true, because if you cast Yip Yip on Grand, it becomes a 3/4 flyer, which means it will almost certainly have good attacks and will let you do the extra loot. Also, Grand can attack well with things like Knowledge Seeker, because you attack with the Grand and Knowledge Seeker grows. Same goes with the Penguin that can get unblockable. Attack with the Grand or tap Grand in some way pre-combat, and you get the second draw trigger that will enable boosts for stats for those creatures. In terms of black, as you said, black is the weakest color by win rate, but Black Bomb actually is the highest win rate card in the set, and the other ones are not far behind. Rise of Sozin is another of those sagas. This time it's not an X-Avatar, it's the actual body, the OG Firebender that started the war. Sozin, it's costing 6 mana and starts with the Wrath. Just destroy all creatures. Just clear the slate, no problem. Chapter 2 is you choose a card name and you search your opponent's graveyard, hand, and library for up to 4 cards with the name that you called, and then you exile them, and then that player shuffles. So yeah, you basically can Wrath, then you try to get rid of something. It will be amazing in the worlds with the open deck list, when you know exactly what your opponent has, you see what they have in the graveyard, and you can just snipe one of the best cards that they still have in their deck with your Rise of Sozin. That's going to be atrocious. And then you flip it into a 5/5 creature with a bunch of abilities on top of everything. Yeah, card is super powerful. All of those saga mythics are just very powerful. Even the ones that are on the lower side of the spectrum, like the Legend of Kyoshi that we talked in the preamble about, still quite good. Okay. Then we have a rare with a quite high win rate. Actually, that's the highest win rate rare in the set, the Fire Nation Drill. 2 black for a vehicle, another vehicle that is good. So best uncommon vehicle, best Best rare vehicle. I'm really worried about going on limited resources for that set because I'll have to defend vehicles once again. Although maybe they build the Man of War vehicles to appease Marshall or something. Anyway, 2 black for a vehicle. It's a 6/3 with trample and crew 2. But I think that the most important part of it is when the Fire Nation drill enters, you may tap it. Weird, but okay. And there is a very good reason why you may tap it. When you do, destroy target creature with power 4 or less, which is a good 90% of the creatures in this set. So it's basically 4 mana removal spell that leaves behind a 6/3 vehicle. And it also has an ability: permanence your opponent's control, lose hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. And I think that the tap it ability is exactly linked to this 1 mana ability that permanence your opponent's control, lose hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Because in this way, you can play it, the trigger for the tapping appears. In response to the trigger with tapping, you can use the 1 mana ability and something can lose hexproof, and then you can target that hexproof creature with the ability after you tap your thing. So that's why they did it. It's a design kind of issue, because if you did not have this tap, you would not be able to target hexproof creatures with the Fire Nation drill, because there wouldn't be a time to react. Because you have to target with the ETB before you can use the ability or something like that. And the last one we have is Ko, the Face Stealer. That's a 6 mana legendary creature, shapeshifter spirit. It's a 6/6. When it enters, exile up to 1 other target creature. So straight up 6 mana, 6/6 that just kills something. Just your Necrotal, but a 6/6 for 2 more mana and exiles instead of killing. And it also can target black creatures. Then another non-token creature dies, you may exile it, and you have a choice. If you want your own creatures to go to the graveyard because they don't have anything useful as abilities, fine. Your opponents, you probably want to exile every single thing, not to give them additional resource and stop their recursion spells from working. And it has also an ability: pay 1 life, choose a creature card exiled with Ko. And Ko has all the activated and triggered abilities of the last chosen card. So yeah, if you have I don't know, something with water bending, yeah, you can give Ko the ability that that creature had. If something has a triggered ability that whenever an ally enters, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, sure, Ko can also get that ability. It's a great card, like a lot of stuff that is powerful in there, including the sizing of it. In terms of the black commons, top common for now, but these are very close, and also worth noting, these are on the lower side of the win rates compared to the rest. Like the black bombs are super powerful, and there's a lot of them, a lot of very powerful high rarity cards. Commons are pretty low. I think that Deadly Precision is just barely over 56% win rate, when we see things like Lost Days being at 60%, and things like Yip Yip and Airbending Lesson at 59%. Here we're talking about 56 and maybe even below 56. But Deadly Precision is the black for sorcery, destroy target creature, but as an additional cost to cast this, you have to either sacrifice an artifact or creature or pay 4 mana. And it just peeped out, sold out by fractions of a percentage point, and sold out is the 4 mana instant exile target creature. If it was dealt damage this turn, create a clue token, which will happen very, very rarely. So it's basically 4 mana exile something. It's true, we have the first common creature that made the list, but Corrupt Court Official, if it was white, it would not make the top 10 white commons with that win rate. So yeah, it is the first common creature that made the list, but it's probably not the best common creature that we should have gotten if I gave you, card number 4 in white, card number 4 in blue. They are all better than Corrupt Court Official. And Corrupt Court Official does what normally corrupt court officials do. It's the Virus Beetle, it's the Ravenous Rats, it's the 2 mana 1/1 that when it enters, target opponent discards a card. Always decent, but in this set, I also had moments when opponent played it against me, cast it against me. I played turn one Fire Nations Cadets. Opponent played Corrupt Court Official. I discard some expensive lesson and gave my corrupt and gave my fire gave my Fire Nations Cadets fire bending, and next turn I had like 4 mana to spend in my combat. Yeah, the virus beetle effect has been in every set ever. I guess that Corrupt Court Official will be best in white black, where you have technically the sacrifice theme. But there's nothing to sing about that card. It's just fine. But that's generally the problem of black. Commons are not great. So don't go into black for commons. Unless you're planning to splash Sold Out as a removal, I don't think there is a reason to pick any black common early. Unless you're like, yeah, there is reason. You open one of the big black bombs. Then there are reasons to pick up black commons early. But there is no reason to go into black but because you see Sold Out or Deadly Precision. In terms of the uncommons, we see Heartless Act, Epic Downfall, reprints, both of them, and both of them being great, especially Heartless Act. That one has over 60% win rate. Epic Downfall is slightly lower, like at 59%. Both of those cards were printed before. We played in them in Ikoria, and Epic Downfall was in something, I want to say, Thrones of Eldraine. Am I right or am I wrong? So we played with those cards before, and they are very good, efficient removal spells, and that's why they are the top cards. Third one is Catgator. That's the mono black payoff. 7 mana for a 3/2 lifelinker. When this creature enters, it deals damage equal to the number of swamps you control to any target. And this card, it does say swamps, and it is technically a mono black payoff. But looking at the data, it seems like this card is actually solid in non-mono black decks. The deck should be like heavy enough on black that you will have like exactly what the chat says, like 3-4 swamps in play already. But you don't have to be mono black, and you can see that in the data very clearly that it does fine in like Dimir decks that are a bit heavier on the black. You know, the ones that are 9/8 in swamp to island ratio is going to be fine. Cool. Red bombs, and we have none. No red bombs. None of the red cards have crossed the threshold. Red has the opposite problem as black had. They have very good commons, but no particularly solid bombs. A couple of cards were close. The Legend of Roku, the Red Saga, was just below the threshold. But I make the threshold for a reason, and therefore there is no red bombs listed on the list. Top commons, on the other hand, really solid collection of those three. Firebending Lesson, Lightning Strike. Firebending Lesson is a shock that can be turned into a deal 5, only to creatures. It cannot go face. And Lightning Strike is Lightning Strike, deal 3 to any target. So these ones are quite obviously good, but not far behind them is Yuyan Archers, a 2-mana 3/1 reach. When it enters, you may discard a card, and if you do, draw a card. It's great in the Fire Nation Cadet curve-outs, where you can play Fire Nation Cadet on turn 1. That's the 1/2 that gains Firebending 2 whenever you have a lesson in your graveyard. So Yuyan Archers can enter, discard some expensive or unnecessary lesson, draw a card, and activate the cadets, which can then attack, and then you have 2 mana on your combat to cast something else at instant speed. So this card is a big surprise of how well it's doing. We were speculating in the Skeleton archetype stream that it can be fine, but I think that this card is fine plus. It's better than fine. It's like a C plus approaching B minus level in terms of its win rate, and especially in some ultra aggressive decks, they want probably any number of Yuyan archers, because not only are there good early as a 3-1 attacker that can really lower your opponent's life total, but they're also good late if you play right and you keep the lands that you don't need to be playing in your hand, and the Yuyan archers can convert them into spells later in the game while still presenting a 3-power attacker. Red uncommons. Number 1 is Cave of Two Lovers. And I know that there's some people who are low on this card, but numbers are quite solid on it all the way through. It's over 60% win rate. You make those 2 white allies, so you sort of go white. A bit late, but fine. Then you can get a mountain or a cave. And the cave text, by the way, is not completely blank in this set. There is 1 cave, and that's actually a very good card for red aggro decks. It's the Secret Tunnel, something that is either as a land is unblockable. So if you're playing Gruul, you can make it into a formidable threat that is unblockable. Or for 4 and tapping it, it gives unblockability to 2 creatures you control, which is great for finishing the game when you drop your opponent to 7 life. 2 attacks with those with the cave, and the game is over. So having an access to the second copy of it in your deck with the Cave of Two Lovers is nothing to frown upon, especially that by the time that you have Cave of Two Lovers and you can cast it, you don't necessarily need a mountain. You might as well get a colorless land and promote your attacks through that. And the Earthbend later, especially when you got your cave that is unblockable as a land, because the cave has the ability this land can't be blocked. If you Earthbend 3 on that Secret Tunnel, and it's a lot of value. It's a 5/5 stats plus drawing a land for 1 piece of cardboard. And if you play red-white, and I did it, you can airbend it in response to Chapter 3 and do it all over again. Lovely times. Then second best red uncommon is Iroh's Demonstration. Ironic that probably the best Iroh card in the set. The uncommon Iroh is not so good. The Boros one is fine. And the Lotus is situational, but it's a 3-color card, which always will have a penalty for its win rate. But Iroh's Demonstration, well, for those of you that don't know the lore, Iroh is the most beloved character in the history of television, probably. Therefore, the design team should have pushed Iroh a bit more to please the crowd that like Avatar. Iroh's Demonstration, 2 mana, sorcery lesson, and you can choose one. Either deal 1 to every creature an opponent controls, or deal 4 to one of their creatures. Well, or yours, if you can target your creature if you really want. Hi, Barche boss. So yeah, I mean, the solid removal sometimes will sweep the board, and sometimes it's such a useful ability. The Iroh's Demonstration, dealing 1 to everything. Couple of cards are generating a lot of 1/1s, and Iroh's Demonstration is a clean answer to that. Sometimes we'll just win the game single-handedly, and this is great to have on the 2 mana removal that is good anyway. Combustion Technique is 2 mana instant lesson. It deals 2 damage plus the number of lessons in your graveyard to any target, and you exile that target instead of putting it in the graveyard. I stomped you the other day, came back to say thank you. Oh yeah, we did play. I'm sorry for stomping you. I don't remember. Was it against my red-green or Naya deck? But I think that these are the last 2 decks I played. So one of those 2. They were designed to be stomping people, I think. They were quite good versions of it. Combustion Technique, very solid lesson. The exile part is nice. It's cheap. It's instant speed for your firebending. All being great. Oh yeah, that was the Naya version. Yeah, that was a great deck. Okay, green. Well, there are some solid bombs in green. First of all, the Earth King. It has the highest win rate of all the green cards, and one of the highest win rates in the whole set. It's a 4 mana 2/2 that comes with a 4/4 friendly bear, and then whenever you attack with a 4/4 with the 4 power greater creature, you get to search your library for a basic card, put it into the battlefield tab. This card, if it doesn't die, just so much value. Like starting from the fact that you can just Earthbend it. I had it once on board with my Airbender's Ascension active, when I could basically how is it, teleport circle it every single turn. So yeah, making 4 bears, because somehow they did not make the bear legendary. I think it's a mistake. They should have made the bear legendary to stop those kind of shenanigans, especially that the bear has a name in the show, Bosco. So it could have been Bosco the legendary bear. I don't see a reason for that, not to make it, but somehow they went for making a generic 4/4 bear, and then that gives a window to some certain levels of abusing of this card. Second of all, you can cast it and straight up attack with a different 4-power creature and instantly get also ramp out of it. So you can accrue this instant value. Even if they kill the Earth King, you're left with the 4/4 bear, which is not a terrible thing. Oh, I swiped and removal from them and get a bear. So it's really hard to be ahead with that card, and it's done outrageous things whenever I had it in my deck. Earthbender Ascension, another great card, and I think the only Ascension that made it into the bomb territory so far. Earthbender Ascension is 3 mana for enchantment. All those Ascensions, they require to gather 4 counters on them, and everyone gathers counters in a different way. But Earthbender Ascension, when it enters, you Earthbend 2, then you search your library for a basic land, and you put it on the battlefield tapped, and then you shuffle. It has landfall, that enchantment. So whenever a land you control enters, you put a quest counter on this. And when you get 4 quest counters on it, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, and it gains trample and end of turn. So it spots 1 quest counter because it searches for the land and puts it onto the battlefield. So you start sort of with 1. The Earthbend creature, if it dies, will spot you another one, because if it dies, it comes back. Generally, any Earthbending creature trading will spot you additional counters, and when you play lands normally, also you get those counters. Once you hit the 4th one, you get the +1/+1 and trample on something, and often it will be like on a big Earthbend land already, and these are good, and you can make them to 7/7, 8/8, no problem. But sometimes you play against like ally deck that can just chump for days with 1/1s, and it doesn't do anything. Putting a counter on it and giving it trample all of a sudden is a problem for especially those go white creatures. Badgermole Cub. Now this is the all-star for constructed formats. I think it's going to be pretty powerful in standard until people realize that, hey, Into the Flatmaw exists. You can hose opponents super bad with if they play Badgermole in the wrong place of the mana curve, especially on turn 2. But Badgermole is a 2 mana 2/2. When it enters, you earth with 1. So 2 mana for a 2/2 and a 1/1. And when you tap a creature for mana, add an additional green. So your Earthbent land can tap for 2 mana now, one of which has to be green. Which, on turn 3, you can cast Badgermole Cub, Earthbend the untapped land, cast another 2-drop. And then on turn 3, you can, on turn 4, you can cast a 5-drop. Great ability. I think I've seen the most outrageous thing ever in my Discord. By the way, I have a Discord. You can join it if you want. You can find the link to it in my link tree, and if not, then just pester me with some DMs, and I can find you a link. But in that Discord, Waffle Knight, one of their faithful patrons of mine, showed me their turn 4, where they had 2 Badgermoles, 2 lands with Earthbending, both of them tapping for 3 mana now, and them casting Planetarium of Waishi Tong on turn 4, and still having mana enough to use it for tapping and scrying. And that's not a bad turn 4 when you're casting basically a draw 2 cards a turn artifact for 6 mana that also casts those spells for free. And their opponent being on 2 lands because they missed a land drop, and already with an exploded head, because who will beat that even if you have a good curve out, not to mention when you drop a land drop. So yeah, it can do some outrageous things. No, it takes 3 mythics, Barchibos, 3 mythics. And yet it happened. And I'm really sad that they couldn't activate the planetarium before opponent considered, because they also had Kona and they also had Kona in their deck. So maybe they could have ripped Kona off top with planetarium and put it on board, so they would have turn 3 double Badger Mole planetarium and Kona, which would have been hilarious, and then opponent can concede. But Badger Mole generally is a very good value creature. Just a 2/2 with a 1/1 for 2 mana, that's so much ahead of rate. Normally we get those effects for 3 mana, and they are fine. The fact that this ramps you also, amazing. So it has a 62% win rate, lower than the Earth King, but still quite solid. In terms of commons, Papa or Mama Badger Mole keeps up with the offspring and is the top green common. It doesn't have like super amazing win rate. It's I would have to figure it out right now, but I thought it was in the 58s. I might be wrong though. Common green Badger Mole. Oh, yeah, 57.3, so even lower than I thought. So it's not like super high, and green commons are lagging behind what the green busted bombs are doing. But it's still a solid card. For a 5-drop to have that high of a win rate, it's a sort of an achievement. But you know, it's a 5-drop that is at 4/4 and a 2/2. So, fun fact: double the power toughness of the cub, double the earth bending of the cub, and then it gives trample to all creatures with +1/+1 control, or you control. So definitely you get enough value for that 5 mana, and that card goes relatively late still. And if you have heavy earthbending deck, then it sort of runs into the same problem that I told you about when I was talking about the Earthbender Ascension, that you produce those large attackers, but they can be chumped for days by allies, and Badger Mole stops that from happening by giving them trample. Number 2 on the green common list is Pyral Launch. Same thing as when I was talking about the Yip Yip. Of course, you don't need multiples of that in your deck. Probably one is good. And of course, the card gets a bonus from early format because people don't play around it, don't expect it to happen, and that gives you benefits. But still, it means that it's a solid card at least. And then number 3, green common, Ostrich Horse. 3 mana, 3/1, mill 3 cards. You may put a land card from among them into your hand. If you don't, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. And sometimes you will just, even though you had a land available, you would prefer it to be a 4/2. Like, I don't know, play it turn 3, skip picking up the land from your graveyard, make it into a 4/2. Turn 4, you can cast the Earth King, and then attack with the Ostrich Horse, instantly get a land ramped. So you end up in the same spot, but also thinned your deck from 1 land. Great. And you have a bigger creature. Green uncommons. The best one is Allies at Last. And it's the best one by quite far. I think it's got like 59% win rate. So it's a 3 mana removal that can cost even 1 mana if you have allies, and it will usually kill the thing that you target with because it's a bite spell from 2 creatures. Tough the Blind Bandit is significantly behind allies at Last, but way ahead of everything else in green. So Tough the Blind Bandit is a 3 mana X3. When it enters, you Earthbend 2. And its power is, or her power is equal to the number of +1/+1 counters on the lands you control. So because it Earthbends 2, it will be instantly like a 2/3. But if you do other Earthbending, easy. I was attacked by an 8/3, and it was not fun. So Tough is great, and it's, as I said, significantly behind allies at Last, but not like amazingly behind. There's like 1 percentage point difference between those cards, and way ahead of all the other green uncommons. And the chasing pack is tight, and there is a bunch of cards in there. But Flopsy, Boomy's buddy, is first among them for now. It's a 6-drop. It's a 4/4. But when it enters, you put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, which includes Flopsy, which makes it technically into 5/5. And then your creatures with power 4 or greater can't be blocked by more than one creature, which is sometimes quite useful. And as I said, yeah, there's like 57% win rate for 59.5% win rate for allies, 58.7 for Toff, and then 56.6 for Flopsy, which is like 2 percentage points different from between Toff and Flopsy. So that's a big jump. And then you have like a bunch of other cards that are going to be just behind Flopsy. There's the Boulder, Earth Kingdom General, True Ancestry. All those cards are super close with each other. So there's the Chasing Pack of those middle tier uncommons in green. So allies at last and Toff are just head and shoulders above the rest. That's very important. Okay, what is next? Multicolor. There are bombs in multicolor. And there's more than 3, but the top 3 are Ankh Swift Savior, the 3-mana 2/3 flash flying, and when it enters, you can airbend up to 1 other target creature. So this one can target earthbending lands. They get exiled, they come back as a land. Or spell. So this is actually can work as a sort of remand-ish, but instead of drawing a card, you draw a 2/3 flying creature on board. And also it has like Waterbend 8, transform it, and it transforms into a 5/5 that whenever it attacks, 5/5 trample reach, if I remember correctly. And when it attacks, you put a counter on every tapped permanent creature that you control, which counts itself. It's tapped because it's attacked. So it becomes a 6/6 trample reach. And Waterbend 8 is very doable, actually. So you will flip it often in those games. But yeah, great card, a lot of abilities and a lot of good abilities as well, and will be constructed playable. I'm eagerly. Oh no, I already got my playset. Yay! Together with my Appas and my other Angs. Guess what I'm planning to do with that? Some sort of ally combo. Azula Cunning Usurper is the second most winning multicolor high rarity card and crosses that 62% win rate, which is impressive because it's a blue-black card, and blue-black is a less powerful color combination. So the fact that it's second means that Azula is a substantial chunk of Demir's power, and I think that the other substantial chunk is in the Signpost Uncommon for Demir, which is super strong. Azula Firebending 2, a 4/4/5 mana. That is slightly hard to cast. And then when she enters, target opponent exiles a non-token creature. So it's sort of like Shieldrit's Edict 1 mode. They choose, but it has to be a non-token one. So they need to sacrifice cardboard. But arguably, they can sacrifice an earthbent land. So that's the worst case scenario for you, because then this land comes back to the battlefield because they get exiled. But then they also exile a non-land card from their graveyard. So it's an edict from the graveyard. If they have a very small graveyard, they will be forced to choose something. So maybe you should play around that. And then during your turn, you can cast either of the cards that you exiled with Azula. And you may cast them as though they had flash. And you can spend mana of any type to cast them. And the flash part is important because Azula has firebending, so you can use firebending mana to cast them because you can cast them for mana of any color. So if you engineer it well, it's basically a 5 mana 4/4 draw 2 cards from your opponent's deck. So sort of Gonti vibes there. And if you hit the opponent just at the right spot, you can get something really powerful. And the other bomb, Boomy Unleashed. 5 mana for a 5/4 with trample, and it enters you Earthbend 4. And when Boomy deals combat damage to a player, untap all lands you control. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. Only land creatures can attack during that combat phase. It's a raid monster. 5 mana, you get 9/8 of stats across 2 bodies. And then sometimes it will happen that you untap your lands, so you can cast something pre-combat, attack with Boomy when you know that Boomy will connect. And then you get a second attack with your 4/4 Earthbending land. Cool. In terms of top commons, there are also multicolor hybrid commons, and I rated all of them. I think the important part is that Messenger Hawk, the Demir one, is a lot better than the rest of them. 57.5% game in hand win rate, which is good for a hybrid card with such a low hybrid investment. So it's 2 and a hybrid Demir, which means that you can play it very easily in the blue or a black deck, not necessarily in a blue black deck. So like in the blue red tempo deck, for example, that draws cards a lot, that can be a very good card. It's a 1/2 flying, and when it enters, you create a clue token. I've been absolutely savaged yesterday in our FNM draft by my mate who was playing a Demir value deck. It had the Hawk, it had the Rare Eagle, that is also like a bomb level card that also generates a lot of clues, and they just like outvalued me on so many levels. I was trying to have some white board. They had a Wrath, bunch of removal, the Signpost uncommon for blue black, and it was just such a sweet deck and completely. It felt like an unfair game. I felt like I was literally bullied by him. So yeah, it can make some nice thing, and I think Messenger Hawks in that deck were playing a very key role of, okay, I have all that advantage. How I'm going to finish my game, and attacking with Messenger Hawks after sacrificing a clue is one way of doing that. And then we have a bunch of those mediocre hybrid cards. There is the Pretending Pogs Bears, a 2/1 that dies into a 1/1. There is the Wandering Musician, the 2/5 that pumps the team attack when it attacks. There's the Earth Kingdom Soldier, like a 3/4 Vigilance that can pump 2 creatures when it enters, and somehow is not an ally. And maybe the last one is the Abandoned Attachments, the Tormenting Voice variant that is a lesson and can be cast for blue as well. And these are, like solid. You will play them in your deck and you will be fine with that, maybe even happy in some cases. They are not like a must, but they are easy to pick up. And I think that there are other ones that are maybe you should be less happy to be playing. And it's like Vindictive Warden, the Rakdos version of it. Platypus Bear, the Simic 2-drop with Defender that will probably rarely have Defender. So it's basically a Simic 2/3 vanilla that mills 2 when it enters. Earth Village Ruffians, very replaceable card. And 2, I think, that are actively bad. Cat Owl, the Azorius one, and Earth Rumble Wrestlers, the Gruul one. They are probably actively bad with like 53% win rate. And there are the uncommons. And there are 2 of those. So there's 20 Signpost uncommons. I bundled together the hybrid uncommon legends and 2 colored uncommon signposts. There are those 2 cycles. That's why there's 20 of them. But there are 2 of them that are way above everything else. And one of them, number 1 currently, is Sokka Lateral Strategist. 1 Azorius for a 2/4 Vigilance. When Sokka and at least 1 other creature card attack, draw a card. And it's generally good. 3 mana, 2/4 Vigilance is a good rate. It will so often attack without a problem with another creature. With the 4 toughness, it will survive the combat early in the game. There are a couple of cards that combo with it. The Messenger Hawk, for example, automatically gets the +2 attack option when you've drawn 2 more cards this turn. You can attack with Sokka and the Penguin, and the Penguin will get unblockable, so it will always connect and not be involved in being blocked. So if you can protect Sokka, great. There are a couple of other cards that will work great with that, like the Fox. Fox will get a counter automatically when you attack with Sokka. So generally a good card with some minor synergies on top of that, and the highest win rate of all the signposts. And also, as you'll see later, it's not necessarily a blue-white card. It can play in just any white, specifically, I think, deck color combination. The second one that is in this tier of its own is Foggy Swamp Spirit Keeper. That's the thing that bullied me yesterday. 1 blue-black for a human druid ally with lifelink. It's a 2/4. So yeah, 3 mana for a 2/4 lifelink. Again, great. And also, like, it's maybe not an accident that both of those best performing signposts are 2/4s, because they block so well. Um, Foggy Swamp Spirit Keeper is a great name. Hello to Jordan. To Jordan, one of my favorite human beings in the chat. It's also an ally, which I told you earlier that I had the deck with the Katara that doubles the triggers from any ally, and this thing in my deck when I played the more 5-color adventurous version of what I tried to do. And getting double spirit tokens was great. Because when you draw your second card each turn, you create a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token. With this token, can't block or be blocked by non-spirit creatures. And there is not that many spirits in the set. There are some, but there's not that many, which means that those 1/1 spirit creatures are sort of like, and that brings me back to the origin of my limited playing, are sort of like having Shadow when they participate in a very different combat game as everything else, because they will just attack and they can't be blocked by anything, but they also cannot block anything. So just attack with them every turn. If you can pump them, yeah, the fox is a spirit. There is Ko is a spirit. There is definitely a couple of spirits in the set, but not that many. In most of the games that I played and I had the spirits, they were just existing in their own plane. Obviously, because that's happening not so often, uh, I'm sure that everyone is guaranteed to attack into an open, bigger spirit at least once in their lifetime, and it will happen, and you will learn that there are other spirits in the set. But most of the time they are just like existing in its own plane of existing, which is climatic, because literally the spirits in the avatar world exist in a different plane and only occasionally can interact with the material world, and only few people can interact with spirits. Cool. Card is great. Card is absolutely great and busted. And then we have a lot of cards that are good. Everything that is on that list is sort of playable to playable plus. I think that the first maybe 4 or 5 that I'm going to be talking about are playable plus, and the rest of them are just playable. But we have Dragonfly Swarm, a 3-mana Izzet card, a flying ward 1, power equal to the number of non-creature, non-land cards in your graveyard. It's an X3. And when it dies, if there's a less in your graveyard, which probably almost always there will be, you draw a card. So it's sort of like Crackling Drake adjacent creature, slightly smaller, but there's this ward on it. It will draw a card on death trigger rather than on the ETB trigger, which is of course worse. But yeah, word is annoying and can grow quite big. Also, notably, is a dragon, so it will synergize with the bigger dragon, the rare dragon in the set. If it dies, it will give you some bonuses. Yeah, it looks pretty solid and has high win rate in an archetype that is not performing particularly great, which is always nice to see. Tools of War, another card that performs great in an archetype that's not so great. So good to see that those signposts can represent and be the driving force of their archetypes. Ores of Mana for an enchantment. When it enters, you make a clue. And whenever you sacrifice a permanent during your turn, create a 1/1 ally. This ability triggers only once each turn. It is the hidden stockpile kind of vibe from this card, as Jordan noticed in the chat. And yeah, it's fun to play. It's really strong if you have the dedicated white-black deck. I think the main problem is that the dedicated white-black deck will not come too frequently together. It's a bit harder to build, and also is a bit fragile if you draw the wrong order. And I think that this is the main problem that Orzhov has. Like, I was playing like hard to imagine a better version of Orzhov, and then the games when I drew the cards in the right order, I just breezed through them. I just making millions of creatures every turn by sacrificing things. But in some games, I just like was doing nothing really, and that was the problem I've encountered. And then the draft ended like a solid 4 or 5-3 or something. But I never felt with this deck that sometimes you draft a deck and you get the good version of the archetype, and you think like, oh, this deck is gonna trophy no matter what, and then you trophy. And with this, I never had that feeling that, oh, this deck is gonna trophy. I always had the feeling that this deck is super strong and really fun to play, but I never felt this inevitability that you sometimes feel. I always felt that I'm one bad draw away from disaster, and one good draw from complete domination. Um, then we have White Lotus Reinforcement, simple, 3 mana, 2/3 Vigilance, and Ally Lord gives them +1/+1. Very simple card, but very powerful, 58% win rate. Jet Freedom Fighter, which sounds something that Americans would produce in Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman factory. But this jet fighter does not fly, which I think is a flavor fail a bit. This jet freedom fighter is 2 Boros hybrid for a 3/1 legendary creature human rebel ally. When it enters, it deals damage equals to the number of creatures you control, and to target creature an opponent controls. And when Jet dies, you distribute 2 counters on each of up to 2 target creatures. It doesn't say if Jet dies, it says when Jet dies. Spoiler alert for people that didn't watch Avatar. Although it's off screen, so we never can be sure. So yeah, great card. Has its issues. I think people try to maybe jam it in non-Boros decks slightly too often, which might have an impact on the win rate, because it is still powerful in any white deck, and of course great in mono white deck. And don't get me wrong, I mean, you can put any number of Jets in your mono white deck, especially since you're probably playing Gather the White Lotus, and that generates tons of creatures, which means you can kill anything with Jet. But some people will probably try to play it in white green or something, which is when white is a bit more heavy on the white. But it's still not guaranteed that you'll be able to cast a white to creature in those decks easier. And I'm sure that is going to be impacting generic win rate of the card. It looks very strong, and the ability is very good. The fact that it leaves those counters behind makes it sort of like a 5/3 of stats that killed something, which is really, really good rate. Yeah, yes, it's still a very strong card. And I still would probably play it in some versions of non-white red decks. I just would acknowledge that occasionally it will rot in your hand. Then we have an interesting card. I'm super pleased to see that so high in those multicolors. I'm only going to cover the top 12 because of how the win rates were distributed. So I'm ignoring 8 of those multicolor cards, but Guru Pathik is not one of those that I'm going to ignore. 57.1 win rate, which is fine, which is solid. For a 2 and a Simic 2/4 legendary creature human monk ally. When Guru Pathik enters, you look at the top 5 cards in your library, and you may reveal Lesson, Saga, or Shrine, and put it in your hand, and the rest on the bottom of the library. And then when you cast a Lesson, Saga, or Shrine, you can put a +1/+1 counter on another target creature you control. So it cannot boost itself, but anything else can get a counter from it, and it's solid. Yeah, I think that the fact that it's a hybrid allows it to be played in multiple decks. It can be played in some sort of Simic Timur kind of Lessons deck, but it also can find spots in Izzet Lessons. Maybe even if you have a more lesson heavy version of the mirror, it can find its spots. The counter that you put on creatures you control, on a creature you control, a very useful ability, nice boost from what it's doing. Like generally a nice package for a specific deck, but you do want to have some Lesson Sagas, and dare I say, maybe even Shrines, because I think the Shrine deck can exist and can be real. And I'm not going to tell you today how it should look like, but at least I see signs in the cards that that there is something in there. And once we get more data, and hopefully the data from the 17Lands public data set, there will be much more information on how the Shrines deck should look like, or those kind of like build around things. Then we have Hermetic Herbalist, which will go together with Guru Pathik because the Simic signpost. It's green blue for a 2/3 taps to add 1 mana of any color, or taps to add 2 mana in any combination of colors that you can only spend to cast Lessons. So yes, definitely an interesting card, a good mana dork that is good defensive, can boost you very quickly. So, you can do this on turn 2, and on turn 3, you can start casting the, what's the blue thing? Lost Days. There we go. Which is relatively quick, and that can set you up for a healthy life total once you approach the late stage of the game. Then you have the Daily Angels. Daily Angels. No, it's not Charlie Angels. It's Daily Agents. 3 black green for creature human soldier. 3/4. When this enters, you earthbend 1, and then you earthbend 1 again. So you can either put 2 on 1 land or distribute them so you have more lands. And there is a reason why you might be distributing them across multiple lands, because when this creature attacks, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, when X is the number of creatures you control with counters on them. +1/+1 counters. It doesn't count any other counters, which exist in this format, so maybe important. And then Daily Agents. Also nice to see that Golgari Signpost is relatively high, given the fact that Golgari does not have the amazing win rate. But that sort of shows promise that maybe we can improve on the builds of Golgari decks over time, because at least the Signpost is there, and there is some hope it will be fine. Air Nomad Legacy is next, and that's 56% win rate. So we're approaching this lower level of those acceptable Signpost. That's just Azorius mana, so white and blue for an enchantment that makes a clue. And instead of sacrifice something and get a 1/1, this one is creatures you control with flying get +1/+1. So an anthem for flyers. And I think that this card might also suffer from being put into too many decks. I think that it's fine. It's really good in certain decks. They really need to be filled with flying creatures. And then you can either skip the 2-drop and just play this and then start deploying the flyers. So maybe this into the Glider Kids, into Ang. Especially the 4 mana Ang is great in that thing, because it will stop opponents from attacking and regain some tempo. And then your Glider Kids are 3/4, and or even Iguana Parrot can be good with that, because it gets Vigilance and becomes a 3/3. And then your Ang becomes a 4/3. Maybe you have some lesson later. The 4/3 can deal lifelinking damage, and it becomes a sort of like, it gives you the tools to race decks that are on paper faster, because the Air Nomad Legacy's pump boost is powerful. However, it's not going to be good in any deck. It really needs a density of flying creature. And if you're wondering what that density is, I have no idea. Not yet, at least. And this is another thing that can be figured out later. Last two, outside of the top 10, but I still incorporated them because their win rate are close together with the rest. So Suki Kyoshi Warrior, the card we discussed before, the sort of wannabe Adeline, that I said the other Suki is more like Adeline in terms of power level and ability of breaking the board. Still, Suki is fine. 56% win rate is fine. Power is equal to the number of creatures you control, X4 for 4 mana with 2 Selesnya. And when it specifically attacks, you create a 1/1 ally that is tapped and attacking. It's fine. It's just fine. It's not amazing. It's not great. It's just fine. Potentially will go slightly down in power as white becomes more contested. But as it is right now, is at 56%. And the last one is Professor Zay, Anthropologist. That's the is it for an 0/3? You can tap to Ramage, so discard and draw. Or you can 1-tap, sacrifice Professor Zay, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand, activate only during your turn. sort of nod to Professor Zay deciding to sacrifice himself to die together with his library that he was doing research on. And that one has 55.7. I included it because the next card after that is something at 53 point something. So there's a big gap between those 12 and the rest. I think Professor Zay is perfectly serviceable card. It's not great, it's not amazing, but it's also not bad, just about fine. And that's why I included it in that list. Okay, so now we can move to the analysis of each color pair. And we start with the power because I'm going to do it in reverse or in the order of from the most powerful, which is Azorius at 58.2, to the least powerful, which is Rakdos at 54.4. And as you can see, there is a gap between between the three most powerful colors and then the middle of the pack and the Simic and Rakdos, which are sort of running to the back. And for each of them, I'll have the same kind of structure, the same structure I'm doing every single time for the early data episode. That's, to be fair, the easiest episode for me to make because I have a formula for it. And by the way, once we finish streaming, if you have any suggestions, I'm open to suggestions for the formula to expand it or to shift it ever so slightly. It's always good to hear feedback about it. But I normally talk about the best common for each color pair, the hidden gem, and the card that I consider a trap. And best common is best common. It's the one with the highest win rate in the color combination. But gem and trap are sort of arbitrary. I usually pick cards that are played a lot or cards that have a low alpha, which means they go quite early in the draft, that have low win rate as traps. And I'm picking cards that are not played often but have a high win rate, or cards that have high alpha, which means they go late in the draft, as hidden gems, because these are the cards maybe people are overlooking still. And in Azorius, the top card is Airbending Lesson, the white repulse, for the lack of a better comparison, with 60.5% game and hand win rate. The card is good. We discussed it. It's one of the top white commons. And probably because of that, it is the best common in this particular color combination. But the gem I selected is just half a percentage point below Airbending Lesson. It's played much less. It's Kyoshi Battle Fan. 2 mana colorless artifact equipment. When it enters, you make a 1/1, and you attach the equipment to it. So it's basically 2 mana 2/2, but it generates 2 bodies, which I think is particularly important if you have the water bending version of the Azorius deck, where you have a lot of water bending things, because it gives you 2 bodies to water bend. So it's basically a soul ring for your water bending, because you can tap the battle fan, you can tap the ally, and all of a sudden you generated yourself 2 mana. Also good with the invasion submersible, because it also generates you 2 bodies, so you can play Kyoshi Battle Fan, invasion submersible, tap 3 things, make a 3/3, and start attacking with a 3/3, especially after you bounce something. 60% win rate is super high. Sample size on the lower side, but it's worth at least watching that card. And also you will see that card in other archetypes, not necessarily as a hidden gem, quite the opposite even. So I here try to showcase that the Battle Fan is a solid card and probably should be played more, but in some decks, maybe it should start be playing less as well. The trap I selected is the Cat Owl, the Azorius hybrid. It's only got a 54% win rate, which is not that great for the highest win rate archetype in the set. It just doesn't do enough. The 3/3 flyer with pseudo vigilance, 4 mana do nothing. So when it enters, it just doesn't do much. And yeah, it seems like this is not the way to go. So people are playing quite a lot of that because it will be always available, and it seems that this may be good for the flyers. But I think that Azorius is not strictly a flying deck. It's more of a water bending tempo deck than a flying deck. And I think that this is the kind of mental differentiation that you can have. And I still think that it can be good with some flyers. Just Cat Owl is not a good example of it. In terms of the uncommons, best uncommon is Immersion Invasion Submersible, 65.4. This is insane as a win rate for an uncommon. This is like really, really high. We talked about this card at length, so I don't have to dedicate more space to it. Just make sure that this is that you understand that this is the mythic uncommon of the set so far. Gem I selected is the Earth Kingdom Protectors. White for a 1/1 vigilance, and you can sacrifice it, and another ally you control gains indestructible until end of turn. Card is super annoying. It can enter early, do a couple of points of damage, and then it just becomes a nuisance because removal is not great in this set, and a lot of it is blanked by Earth Kingdom Protectors, and you have this bad feeling like, okay, I can spend like 3-4 mana to try to kill something, but then I will just kill a 1/1 for 1 mana, which is not a great feeling. So you try to force them to jump with it or something, and it never works. And you just, at the end, you have to fire the removal, waste it on the 1/1, and that is a big hit for your deck. I didn't expect that card to be good, but it has consistently good numbers in most of the white color combinations. So start picking it higher, I think, because right now it's going still relatively late. The trap I selected is Team Avatar. A 2 and a white for an enchantment. When a creature you control attacks alone, it gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. And you can also pay 2 and a white, so the same cost as the casting cost of the enchantment, just to discard it, and it deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to target creature. So a removal. Exactly that kind of removal that I'm talking that is bad against Earth Kingdom Protectors. This is not a bad card. It's not a bad card at all, even. And in some archetypes, it's actually actively a good card. For some reason, it has bad numbers in Azorius. And I did not come to the bottom of it why, but I decided that it's interesting enough that it has this lower win rate of 55, which is not disqualifying, but not great for the top color combination. I still didn't figure out why, but yeah, I think it's worth noticing that it has a markedly lower win rate in Azorius, which is particularly strange because, yeah, exactly, Jordan. It seems very nice with flying creatures, and it seems very nice with water bending, which sort of encourages you to have a wide board. So I don't know what's going wrong with this Team Avatar. It might be that when people put it, they just have decks that have not large enough number of creatures. I don't know exactly why, but the numbers are for now bad, and maybe they will improve over the next weeks. This is also a lot of the time those numbers are going to shift because we're still in the early format and we still are operating on potentially bad information when people are playing against bad decks, and some cards are performing much better than they will in later format. People build their decks not optimally, and some cards are not shining as they would be, and some cards are having higher numbers than they will. So yeah, it's all, I would definitely recommend caution in interpreting those numbers, but I thought it was interesting enough to flag. Cool. The second highest win rate archetype is Boros, and there the best common is Firebending Lesson with 59.7. Yeah, it's just a great removal, very efficient, scales up with the game, is a lesson if you are into that kind of thing. I don't think that the lesson part is particularly important for Boros itself, but 1 mana thing allows you to double spell on turn 3 when you can just kill something and play another 2-drop and continue with your aggression. Hidden gem I selected is Glider Kids, 58.5, so not far from Firebending Lesson, but the card is much easier to pick and goes much later. And I think that people don't value it high enough. Even if they value it okay, I think that they should value it okay plus based on the numbers. Card is very good. Body is very good. The Scry adds to that, especially when you're playing an aggressive deck and you know that you have enough lands. It's so nice when you hit the land from the Scry trigger and just able to swipe it under. And we didn't go far, but Kyoshi Battle Fan I selected as a trap here. Because unlike the 60% win rate in Azorius, here it has a win rate of 53.8. it shows you that the Kyoshi Battle Fan is a fine card, but not necessarily in every deck that it can physically be in. And in Boros, it performs poorly, arguably on a small sample size, which means that there's huge variance. It might go easily to 56, and I wouldn't be surprised. But it is now at 53.8, so it's my duty to warn you about it and be cautious about what your experience of that card is. Top uncommon for the Boros deck is Earth Kingdom Jailer. The what is it called? Something Fiend. Well, you know the type of the card. I always forget it, and I always chat reminds me what the name of the card is that I'm thinking about. But it exiles something, this time with a mana value of 3 or greater, so it won't just hit small creatures. But its body is much better than the normal size of those kind of cards. And the win rate is 62.3, which is really, really credible. Fiend Hunter, thank you very much. Every single time I forget the name Fiend Hunter. And this is something with aging that you just cannot absorb all the information, and the card names are just escaping my head by now. I can describe what they do, no problem. Mana value, power, toughness, types. I can't, for the love of it, remember the names. Okay, and then we have Sokka Lateral Strategies as my hidden gem. Now, we know that it's a good card, but it's an Azorius card, which means that, and especially it's heavy Azorius card, that it has 2 Azorius hybrid in its cost. But in Boros decks, it still has 62.1, which is just below that Earth Kingdom Jailer, which has much easier, much more palatable mana value, mana cost. Which means that Sokka Lateral Strategies must be really, really good in Boros decks. And this shows you that A, hybrid cards can do very well outside of their hybrid colors, and B, that it looks like the Boros deck should be on the white side in terms of which color is the dominant color. I think that this set is promoting a relative disproportion in colors when you're playing decks. You will have Boros decks that will be white heavy, and they will be very different from Boros decks that are red heavy. You know, when red heavy decks will maybe depend on firebending a lot, and white decks will depend on going wide with creatures and generating, because I think white has better creatures than red. It definitely has better creatures than red. And Sokka will be, of course, better in those white tinted versions of Boros decks. And the trap I selected is a card I do like, but the numbers on it are unimpressive, 55%. Sun Warriors, the signpost for Boros. The 2 red and white for a 3/5 with Firebending X, where X is the number of creatures you control, and an ability to pay 5 and then create a 1/1 white ally creature token. By the way, there's infinite combo with Sun Warriors in this set, and it does include 1 rare and 1 rare from the bonus sheet in Intruder Alarm. But you can make infinite allies if you have Intruder Alarm, Sun Warriors, and the Great Divide Guide. So if you manage to fulfill that pipe dream of 4 colors, the high rarity cards, and specific board state, please do tag me in your Twitter post. But Sun Warriors looks pretty mediocre in Boros, and it's always a bad sign when the signpost has low numbers. Signposts are played in so many decks that the sample size for it is probably very large. And if it has this 55% win rate, it means that there is something wrong with that card, even though it looks okay. Okay, let's move on to Selesnya, the third best, and the third of the outstanding 3 color combinations in the set. And the best common in Selesnya is actually Badger Mole, the 5-drop that makes a 4/4 and Earth bends 2 and gives trample to your +1/+1 countered creatures. 59.8% win rate, which is solid, but that strangely makes me think that Selesnya decks are much better off when they are green tinted than they're white tinted. While I was playing mostly Selesnya decks that were more white tinted and more focusing on ally synergies. But here we have Badger Mole, which sort of suggests we do want to be playing more of the earthbending synergies than anything else. which is interesting in its own right. But yeah, it's a 5-drop, so you will not be able to fill your deck with it. Um, but probably you can find space for playing 2 of them. Um, and yeah, again, the win rate is 59.8, which is solid. It's like higher win rate than win rate of Firebending lesson in the Boros deck, which is quite impressive. So it must be important. Hidden gem, I selected this Pillar Launch, the combat trick that untaps. Of course, it's a combat trick. It goes later in the draft because people don't want more than 1 copy of it in their deck, which means you will always get it. I'm just trying to draw attention to the fact that the card is decent. We saw the top commons for each color, and a lot of them were removal spells. And this is why I put Sandbender's Storm as a trap. It has a 53.4 win rate in Selesnya. It's the 4 mana, choose 1, destroy a creature with power 4 or greater, or Earthbend 3 card. It has 2 things that technically Selesnya decks would want, judging by the Badger Moles being the top common. It Earthbends, or it is a removal, which should be good in this set. But it turns out that it's not good enough in neither of those, and it only has 53.4 win rate, which shows that not every removal is good automatically. It's not that removal is good in this set, it's just that the removal that is outstanding for the set, and by outstanding I mean is standing out from the rest of the crowd, is good, but the one that does not do impressive things is just mediocre or even bad. In terms of the uncommons, we see a slightly different picture here. Best uncommon is Water Tribe Rallier, which does not scream Earthbending. It does scream go wide, Waterbend, clog the board. And enter the avatar state. I selected as a hidden gem at 59.8. That's the combat trick that gives flying, lifelink, and hexproof, and first strike if you are into that kind of thing. So yeah, solid trick. This is another card that sort of, I think, promotes board stalls. Because first of all, in board stalls, you often will have a key card like Water Tribe Rallier that will generate you value, and you want to protect that card in order to be the person that breaks the board stall in their favor rather than have the board stall being broken against you. So I think Avatar State is really good with that. Also worth noting that in Selesnya, actually, the team avatar is a good thing, and I did have some games where I just basically won the game by giving something flying and having team avatar as an enchantment on the battlefield and just attacking for, like, I don't know, 15 with lifelink and finishing the game through that. Water Tribe Prior, by the way, is the one that can find you creatures with mana with the power 3 or less from the top if you Waterbend 5. So they're a very board stally card. And maybe Badgermole is good exactly for that reason. It breaks the board stalls by giving trample to your big earthbending things while you clog the board with smaller things from white. Trap that I found is Haru Hidden Talent. I do like that card. I like playing with it, but it turns out that it works for me, but not for other people. The win rate is only 54.6. That's the 2-drop 1/1 that whenever ally you control enters, Earthbend 1. And if I remember correctly, this card has a pretty decent win rate when you have it in your opening hand. But it drops off very quickly when you draw it later. Let's look at Haru. It has, yeah, it has much higher win rate on an opening hand and than you have later. And that's a problem with this card because later it will often become just a 1/1, and you don't want to play just a vanilla 1/1. So I think that this is the drawback, and you don't have like ramaging, looting in white green, which means that you will be stuck with it. Maybe I was lucky and I was drawing it early, and then it was doing really nice things. I think that maybe also people try to use it more like a build your big creature over time thing. Well, I think Haru is also perfect in the late game for putting the Earthbending on one of those sacrifice lands that let you draw a card and getting some value later. But yeah. DJ Straleman. Yeah, blue-white is better than Boros, is better than Selesnya, and then all the other color combinations are coming after that, but they are markedly having a lower win rate than the top three. And I wouldn't even put that blue-white is better than Boros than Selesnya, but they are on the same tier, I would say. Here is the graph of it. They are relatively close to each other. Just that Azorius has a slightly higher win rate, but statistically there is no difference between them. I just like have to pick an order, and I think that this is an order. I would probably look at them as these are the three best color combinations for now, and then the rest are slightly behind. So let's move to the ones that are slightly behind, because as I tried to hammer that message across a couple of times already, early data will promote aggressive decks like Selesnya's, Boros's, Azorius. If the blue allows for aggressive decks, they will always have a slight bump in the early data from the fact that they're normally easier to assemble. The mirror, on the other hand, is notoriously hard to build correctly, and it won't happen on the week one, which means that it will take some time to master those decks. But the gap will close over time, probably. But as it is, Dimir is fourth best in terms of win rate, despite being the second most drafted deck in the format. And here we have a weird situation. When I normally, for the best common, I put the card that has the highest win rate. But here I didn't, because the highest win rate card is actually Kyoshi Battle Fan. But this sample size was very small for that. 60.8% win rate, which makes me think there is some sort of Dimir deck that can use Kyoshi Battle Fan very well. I don't know what it is, but I had to flag it because it looks damn interesting, because this is the last color combination I would expect Kyoshi Battle Fan to be good. And it might be that it's some sort of penguin tempo deck that is heavy blue and is sort of based on those creatures that get bigger and unblockable when you draw your second card, and Kyoshi Battle Fan helps that by putting it on the penguin or something. I'm not sure. This is speculation purely, but the fact is that Kyoshi Battle Fan is the highest win rate card in Dimir, and yet I put it in the hidden gem category because of the small sample size. Best common in Dimir is Lost Days at 60.1 because of its large sample size. Yeah, it does help waterbending too, but I think that the Kyoshi Battle Fan in Dimir is used in just some aggressive version of Dimir that someone figured out, and we might maybe exploring the trophy deck lists by Kyoshi Battle Fan on 17Lands would be an interesting approach of that. Which I didn't do beforehand because I didn't think of that. Fundavunk says that I would have thought it would be 1/3 that makes the clue, the fortune teller. That card is very close in all the blue categories, but it's just outside of those top position in every case. It's a very good card, very solid card. You should definitely draft it and play it. It's just short of the excellence of the cards like Lost Days. So that's the problem. Trap I selected is Iguana Parrot, which has only 54.1 win rate in Dimir, and is played quite a lot. That's the reason why I selected it as a trap, because of the frequency of being played. In terms of uncommon, as you might have guessed, Invasion Submersible is also good in Dimir, 62.3. Hidden gem I selected is the Cat Gator, and this perfectly shows you that this card does not need to be in the mono black deck. Yes, it cares about the number of swamps, but that number being 4 is probably still good enough for Cat Gator. And it gives it 59.6% win rate, game in hand win rate, which is good. And the trap I selected is Hama the Bloodbender, the 2 Dimir hybrid that mills opponent when it enters, and then you can exile a non-creature, non-land card from it, and then you can cast it by waterbending X, where X is the mana value. Yeah, 55% is not impressive. And I don't know, in some decks it looks like it's great if you can go to the late game and play it, but it's horrendous when you have it in your opening hand and you can't do anything with it for days to come. It's like basically starting with the mulligan against an aggressive deck. That's the problem with this card, I think. And sometimes you can cast it and you even get a spell, but you don't have enough waterbending to cast it instantly. They kill Hama and good night, Irene. Okay, let's move to Izzet. And then first of all, Firebending Lesson is the best common in Izzet at 61.4. No surprises there. Cunning Maneuver is what I selected as a hidden gem. It has a markedly lower win rate than Firebending Lesson, but it's just a testament to how good Firebending Lesson is. But it has 57.1 game in hand win rate while going super late, which means that you definitely want to look at that card and put it in your decks. I think that the main secret is playing a red heavy firebending centric version of Izzet deck rather than the blue heavy controlling maybe version of it. And then Cunning Maneuver becomes better. The trap I selected is Porcupine. It's the Spargolger weird of the format. Instead of being a weird, it's just a boar porcupine. 52.6 is a very paltry pickings from that card. I think that generally Spargolger's weird time has passed, and I think that the design team should start moving more into the direction of what we had in, was it Brothers War, when there was a 1/2 version of it for 2 mana with Trample, and that card was great. And I think that if they start moving this card to a 2-drop slot, it's going to do a world of difference for that. And yeah, War of the Spark had Proliferate, which helped that guy. But I think that now, even if there was Proliferate in this format, it would not be good enough. It just grows too slow. It's too fragile on the turn you cast it, or you have to cast it too late. That's the thing. I think that those cards have to hit the board on turn 2. If they don't, they will be just too slow, even if you will make them. I think as if 3-3 it would have been okay. But then it's just good on rate, and then it grows, rather than what Porcupine is presenting, which is bad on rate, but with aspirations. And it's all fine when you fulfill those aspirations, but it's so bad when you don't. You play a Porcupine, tap out, they have Firebending Lesson. We just traded 3 mana for 1 mana, and we were very, very sad. Especially that what you have in your hand is probably non-creature spells, which means that you don't have that much creatures, and you cannot just lose your 3-drops so cheaply. A deck that has 21 creatures or 16 even can lose creatures to a cheap removal and then bounce back from it. But a deck with like 8 creatures and a bunch of non-creature spells cannot lose a single one of them for that kind of cheap cost. In terms of the best uncommon, Combustion Technique, 1 and a red for lesson that deals them 2+ lessons in graveyard damage to something and exiles it. It's just a very efficient removal. And in Izzet, you will have a lot of lessons. I think that's the implication. The implication is that the Combustion Technique in Izzet is not 2 mana deal 2 damage, but it's 2 mana deal 4-5 damage and exile something. And that's what makes it great in here. Interesting hidden gem I selected is Guru Pathik, which is the 2 Simic hybrid creature. But I guess it puts us together with Combustion Technique on the track of, hey, Izzet is a lessons deck, and Guru Pathik and Combustion Technique both care about lessons. Or shrines. I think that shrines will go more into the 5-color department, though. I mean, it's so Lord of Ironforge says it's a fake blue-green hybrid. I don't think it's completely fake. I think it's also okay in Simic and Simic adjacent decks. It's also can be good in other things. But let's see how Guru Patik is doing in Simic. 56. Okay, so it does much worse in actual Simic. But as I said, Simic should not be a deck. Simic should be a multicolor version of it, and I'm pretty sure that if you have like a teamer versions of the deck, the Guru Patik will be fine. The trap I selected also looks at lessons technically. The Zhong the Deserter, 3 mana 2/3 with Firebending 1, and has Exhaust 3. You put a counter on it, and then you make whenever you cast next lesson, you copy it. So it looks like something that the deck might be interested in, but it's just too slow, too hard to enable, or something, and only 53% win rate. So it looks like a trap-ish card. Okay, Orzhov. And here I think this is the most interesting finding that I had throughout the research that led me to this seminar. Top common for Orzhov is Water Tribe Captain. And it's not even close. It has insane win rate of 61.2, when I think the second one is like at 59 or something. And this is a big, big, big signal that Orzhov wants to be more of a go wide deck than a sacrifice deck. The sacrifice team will be there, but the sacrifice should be promoting getting a wide board that you can later benefit from Water Tribe Captain, something like that. Sample size, I can tell you in a second. Common, uncommon, color, all users, all decks, white, black. The sample size is on the small size. Games played around 3,000 games, which is not nothing, but it is on the smaller size. But still, it is the best win rate card, even when looking at uncommons, which is wild. And that means that there is an Orzhov deck that actively wants to have this, and it might be that it's just a white aggro deck with some black removal splashed in. And it is a distinct possibility that that thing exists there. But I definitely had to flag it. And 3,000 games is not nothing. It's enough to give us the plus minus 3 percentage point kind of confidence interval for the win rate, which means that it is probably somewhere not far from that number, and should be still higher than the Callous Inspector there. Callous Inspector, which by the way is the hidden gem. Not that it's particularly hidden from Orzhov, but mainly because the card goes late. So when you're playing Orzhov, you know that if the lane is open, you should have access to a large number of those Callous Inspectors, which are good in the deck at 58.3 win rate. Callous Inspector is the black for a 1/1 menace, and when it dies, it pings you for 1 and you create a clue. So it's the sacrifice kind of payoffy card for this deck. Trap I selected is Pirate Peddlers. I thought that this card may be good before the set was released, mainly and I even like put it against the Avatar Enthusiasts, where Pirate Peddlers, if you draw them late, are still fine because it's a 3 mana 2/2 Death Toucher, so it can trade with something big. While Avatar Enthusiasts, when you draw it late, it's just a 3 mana 2/2 vanilla creature, and then it cannot block efficiently larger creatures. But it turns out that you can grow the Enthusiasts much faster than the Peddlers. Peddlers grow whenever you sacrifice another permanent, and Avatar Enthusiast grows whenever ally enters. And there's so many ways of putting 2 allies on board on the same turn that those Avatar Enthusiasts are a better card because they can grow faster in most of the decks, even if you draw them late. So yeah, Pirate Peddlers did not fulfill my hopes and dreams that this is going to be an average to above average card. It's actually a below average card, and as such, it shows you that those sacrifice synergies are not strong enough to generate the correct amount of sacrificing for Pirate Peddlers to grow fast enough. I'm not saying that there are no versions of Orzhov that, when it comes together, when Pirate Peddlers are excellent, it's just that on average, the card is not great. And also we have this weird signals from the Water Tribe Captain that indicates a go wide Orzhov deck that maybe supplements white creature with removal from black, and that's also good. In terms of best uncommon, it's Ankh, the Last Airbender, 60.8. Talked about this card. It's just a great card and a very powerful card. And in the conflicting world that tells us that sacrifice might not be the best thing to do in Orzhov, we do get the Fire Navy Trebuchet as a hidden gem at 58.7, which is a very pleasant number in general. This is a 3 mana for an 0/4 defender with reach, but whenever you attack, you create a 2/1 colorless construct called Ballistic Boulder that's tapped and attacking, and it will be sacrificed, but not at the end of combat, but at the end of the turn. So you can move to your second main with the tapped 2/1 flyer that you can use as sacrifice fodder for some other abilities. And I was high on this card too before the set was released, and it turns out that it can work. So don't underestimate that card, because 50.8 is good enough numbers, at least early. And again, practice caution and skepticism, but at least there are indicators that it's worth trying that card. Unlike the Buzzard Wasp Colony, which is another card with sacrifice synergies in theory. 4 mana 2/2 flying. When it enters, you may sacrifice an artifact or a creature. If you do, draw a card. And when another creature you control dies, if it had counters on it, put those counters on the Buzzard Wasp Colony. This one, 51.2, is just not good enough. And I don't know, maybe it's just not an Orzhov card. Maybe this is a sacrifice card for Golgari, and it's better there. I actually don't know the numbers right now, and I couldn't be bothered checking. But you can do, because 17Lands data is available for everyone. And if you have questions, you can start exploring them. Like, for example, checking the win rate of cards for specific archetypes. And yeah, Lord of Ironforge mentions the colony does need Earthband, and white and black do not provide enough of it. Because you can sacrifice your big lands and put the counters on Buzzard Wasp Colony and finish the game through huge flyer. Talking about Golgari, best common in Golgari is Ostrich Horse, which I do like. Ostrich Horse as a card, but to be fair, that doesn't bode well for Golgari decks if Ostrich Horse is the best that you can offer. Especially with the win rate of 58.2. I mean, let's look. Water Tribe Captain, the best common in Orzhov, had 61.2. Best common in Izzet had 61.4. Best common in Dimir had 60. 60 in Selesnya, 60 in Boros, and 60 in Azorius, roughly. Here we have 58 with barely small percentages, and that's not good enough. Which means that commons generally in Golgari are bad. Which means that if you go to Golgari, your off-ramp to be there should be cards of a higher rarity. Hidden gem I selected is Azula Always Light with the paltry 56% win rate. I had traps in some colors with similar win rates, so it's not like great. Worth noting that Azula Always Lies is doing relatively well in Golgari, but it's relatively well because the ceiling is quite low. But Azula Always Lie is the 2 mana lesson instant. Choose one or both. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Target creature gets a +1/+1 counter on it. It's a lesson. It adds counters, which is the Golgari theme, and can swing some games. So can be a 2/1 if applied carefully and if opponent plays into it, which early in the format can happen more often than not. So maybe the win rate of the card is going to revert to its actual win rate as we progress in the format. Trap that I selected is Callous Inspector, the thing that was a hidden gem in the last one. Because here it has only 52.9, which means that Callous Inspector is not for every deck and definitely not for Golgari decks, while in Orzhov it was having very solid numbers. Another lesson that cards require the right home, and this is what we're going to be talking about next week when I'm going to do the episode, finding the best homes for each card in the set. And we're going to look at all color pairs from that perspective and try to find which cards are specific for an archetype and which cards are generically good. In terms of the uncommons, Toph, the Blind Bandit is the best Golgari uncommon at 60%, so solid. Yeah, Toph just gives a lot of value, and Earthbending as well. And Hidden Gem I selected is Earth Kingdom General. Now, this is a good card, everyone knows that, but 59.1 is a really high win rate for it in Golgari, and also indicating that Earthbending is the actual theme of Golgari. So yeah, it's not necessarily counters; it's more the Earthbending itself. Earthbending, Earth Kingdom General, of course, 4 mana 2/2. When it enters Earthbend 2, and whenever you put one or more +1/+1 counters on a creature you control, you may gain that much life. So it spots you with 2 life automatically and 4/4 of stats across 2 bodies, which is great. Like, think of all the cards that we played in the recent years that made 2/2/2 bodies, and they were all good. And this one also gains you 2 life. That's very good. But it's not necessarily all about counters, because the Signpost hybrid card, Longfang Grand Secretariat, only has 54% win rate, roughly. That's the one Golgari for a 2/3, and when another creature control or land you control is put into graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Armoric, yeah, maybe. We still don't have the full data on the of the composition, but Armoric is saying so. Deck is basically GX Earthbending with some removal and counter themes. Yeah, and I think that the fact that Daili is a solid card means that it's solid in Golgari. So there will be definitely some mild counter theme, but it's not like ham-fisted. It's not all about the counters. It's more, I think, about Earthbending and good value creatures. Okay, Gruul. Best common in Gruul is weirdly not Firebending Lesson. It is Yuan Archers, which sets the tone for me. It's Gruul decks want to be proactive, aggressive. Yuan Archers, the 3/1 reach that ramages when it enters. Hidden Gem I selected is Wallop Sentries, the 3 mana 2/3 reach Death Touch, and when it dies, if there is a lesson card in your graveyard, you gain 2 life. It's a solid body, like defensively. It's an annoying attacker as well, because how do you block it efficiently? So yeah, quite a fine card. And it has around 58% game in hand win rate, which for Gruul is pretty solid. And then Cycle of Renewal is the trap that I selected because it only has 50% win rate. That's the Harrow variant that is a lesson for the set. I guess that ramping is not what you want to be doing in Gruul. What you want to be doing in Gruul, looking what the Yuan Archers and Wallop Sentries, is curving out efficiently. So yeah, I think this is a sort of like slightly larger sized aggressive deck that does not maybe necessarily rely on ally synergies or anything like that, just on curving out solid creature with good stats and rate. The best uncommon is Allies at Last. Now, this one has mild ally synergies because, of course, it has affinity for allies, but you don't really need allies to cast it. You probably want to have large creatures because that's going to efficiently kill everything. And yeah, it would be cool to pay just 1 mana for it, but if you pay 2, you're also not crying. Hidden Gem, I selected this Fire Nation attacks. 5 mana instant, you create 2/2/2 red soldier creature tokens with Firebending 1, and it has a flashback for 9 mana. Is it 9? 9, yeah. So yeah, yet another thing that points towards maybe Firebending is great in Gruul decks, and you want to play this aggressive curve on, like, I don't know, maybe 1 drop in cadets, maybe turn 2 you want archers, discard some lesson, maybe turn 3 you attack and you cast Fire Nation attacks using the mana you got from the cadets, and you build a pretty sizable board through that. Fire Nation attacks has very, very credible 60.6% game and hand win rate. So it has good numbers. And maybe that's how we should start thinking about Gruuls to get a better result from that deck. So far, it's one of the lower win rate archetypes. I think it's 8th. But I think that there's a potential of building those Gruul decks better, especially if the cards are going to be more available that you want to be putting in this deck. The trap I selected is Zuko, Exiled Prince, 4 mana 4/3, Firebending 3. And for 3 mana, you can exile the top card of your library and you may play that card this turn. Only 53.5. I think 3 toughness is a big problem for that card. I think it would have been absolutely solid if it was a 4/4. But maybe it would be even too pushed if that was a 4/4. Because 4/4s in this set very often will require double blocks. And double blocks with a bunch of firebending mana is an issue. While a 4/3 will often just be single blocked by something. And then the combat trick mana is a bit less scary because you don't put that much on the stake. Yeah, and that's Gruul. I think that the picture of that is a mid-range aggressive deck. Now let's go to Simic, the 9th best archetype in the set. As I said, Simic decks probably are when something goes wrong. If you're playing Simic, you should be playing multicolor decks, I think. And because of that, the 2-color versions of Simic that are in the data are maybe failed experiments by definition almost. However, still worth noting that best common has 59.3 and it's Watery Grasp, the 1 mana aura that makes something not untapped during the opponent's untap step, and also had Water Bends for 5 to shuffle that creature into owner's library if they have some annoying ability that frustrates you. But the biggest surprise for me was that the second best common in Simic was Aang's Journey, the colorless lesson. Kicker 2, you can, with the Kicker 2, normally you just search your library for a basic and you put it in your hand. But if you kicked it, you can also find a shrine. And also you gain 2 life, whatever happened. And that puts me on the track of thinking that there might be some kind of a Simic shrines deck, which will be super heavy Simic, but we'll be splashing 1 land for each of the other colors to put the shrines into the battlefield. Because if that's not the case, then I don't understand if that Aang's Journey would be there as one of the hidden gems. And obviously, this is based on smaller sample size. Armoric is asking, you said you expect blue-green to have bad stats because the archetype is splashing. No, I think that I expect the archetype to have bad stats because the archetype should be splashing more. And then the streamlined 2-color versions are not exactly what the deck should be about. That's what I worry about, is that we are seeing that the best Simic decks are Timur decks, basically. And we don't see that in the Simic data. We see some weird builds that are far from the optimum for that deck. Yeah, it is true that it's also a cheap lesson to get into the graveyard early and help Simic to hit its land drop and play its big green threats. That's fine. But I think it's somewhat interesting that this card, and it's symptomatic that this card is seen like that. Obviously, I will dive deeper into those kind of numbers when we get the deck composition data, which will be interesting. But for now, I can only speculate. This is I call it the data-driven magic paradox, that the better the data, the lower the interest in that data, where this is going to be the episode probably from the whole set that has the most views, listens, whatever. But of course, this is the one that is laden with the highest uncertainty. The best episode I'm making every set is one of the last ones, because then I have like perfect data across multiple weeks. I see how the format has evolved. But my personal tragedy, is that those good episodes that I dedicate a lot of time to, they just don't have the views, because people are no longer interested in drafting the set because the next one is coming. Which is a bit sad, because I put a lot of effort in those late episodes, because that's where the most interesting data analytics can be done, and then they are not particularly popular because of how humanity operates in general. Okay, and the trap I selected is Platypus Bear, because that's the Simic hybrid, and it has a pretty low win rate in Simic, which is also surprising to me, because it has like a 2/3 defender that will often be an attacker in this deck. It's pretty good stat line for a defensive creature, but it turns out it's not enough, and I don't know why. 2/3 for 2, not good enough for blue-green, I guess. Best uncommon is Toph again. But I would like to focus on the hidden gem, the North Pole Patrol. The 3-mana 2/3 that also can untap permanents for tapping it. And for waterbending, it can tap something. So it's a defensive thing, it can ramp you. It has quite a lot of utilities and is actively good in this set, despite being a 3-mana 2/3, which is worse, of course, than the Platypus Bear. I guess the ability is powerful, and it also implies that waterbending is not difficult in this color combination. The trap I selected again is Haru, the Hidden Talent, the 2-drop 1/1 that whenever an ally enters, Earthbent 1. And here it has only 52.8% game and hand win rate, and makes me wonder: is that card just bad because of how bad it is in the late game? Because I had good experience with it. It did nice things in my super heavy ally decks and white green, but maybe Simic does not get enough allies available. I don't know. And we have the last one, the sick man of the format, Rakdos. Best common is Firebending Lesson, but even Firebending Lesson in this color combination has only 58.5 game in hand win rate, which is sad. And I don't know if that's because it's drafted badly, built badly, or is just bad and irredeemable. I think that a lot of people try to build it as a sort of Rakdos sacrifice deck, and I don't think that works. I think that if Rakdos is going to be okay to good, it needs to embrace the firebending build that is red heavy rather than balanced red black version of it. That's why I selected the Hidden Gem in Fire Nation Cadets. This card still goes late, despite all the hype that the 4 and actually a bunch of other people who are not the 4 are giving to it. I tried playing with Fire Nation Cadets with mixed results so far, but I did see that for a lot of people it works great, and it's always that soul ring and generates a lot of value. It did not work for me just yet, but I think that is mainly because I tried it for science, but I never got presented a proper open lane with Fire Nation Cadets. Maybe except one time, but I missed that open lane and I was too late into it and I was already in something else and I had to cut the cadets. And despite playing red, I did not have enough lessons, and that was the problem I had. But yeah, cadets look like a good card. 57.2 in Rakdos was not bad. And I think that if Rakdos has a good build, it will be that firebending one. Trap, I selected Swamp Snare Trap. 2 and a black aura, give something -5, -3, cost 1 less to cast on the flyer. 52% win rate, just not a good card. Fun fact, it turns every APA in the set into an 0-1, I think. That's the joke on it, that the Swamp Snare Trap costs cheaper when you cast it on APA and turns it into an 0-1, but never kills it. It will kill plenty of other things, though, but not efficiently, and that's the problem with this card. It also doesn't trigger any synergies. If it was a lesson, even at sorcery speed, give something -5, -3, probably would have been a better card than Swamp Snare Trap is. And good uncommon, the best uncommon is the Cave of Two Lovers. We talked about this card in length, including lore, value, and everything. It has 60.7% game in hand win rate, so very, very solid. Again, I think that it just generates so much value. That's why it's good. Gem I selected is Wolfbat, 3-mana 2/2 with flying. And when you draw your second card each turn, you may pay black. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield with the finality counter on it. And I don't know, maybe there is like a flying version of Rakdos when you have the blue-black hybrids and wolf bats and some removal, and then you use the skies to push your damage through. But I'm not sure if that is a thing. I'm just wondering how Wolfbat could be good in Rakdos decks, and maybe you can ramage it and get it through that. Maybe like that's a perfect turn 3 play. You play the Yuan Archer, discard Wolfbat, cast the Wolfbat for 1 black, and build some kind of an aggressive board through that. But again, I'm not sure. The trap I selected is Zhao, the Ruthless Admiral. First of all, good. This guy deserves anything worse to happen to him. He was the most vile character in the show, and I'm glad that the card is rubbish. And it's rubbish because it's only 51% game and head win rate. For a signpost, uncommon and hybrid, that's pretty bad numbers. It also makes me think that Rakdos is not about sacrifice. You should move sacrifice to the black-white decks. And maybe Zhao is secretly sort of a black-white card, but I don't know. I didn't have enough data for that, making that kind of assertion. I'm just flagging it. It's your job to explore it. The better you explore it, the more data I have for my next episode. And the more data I have for my next episode, the more balanced and nuanced the takes are going to be. Because as always with data analysis, if you put garbage in, you're going to take garbage out. And this is still a problem with the early data, that there is large uncertainties on those numbers. But large uncertainties don't mean that the data is useless. And that's why I'm giving you this seminar, so that you can use that data not to follow it blindly, but to use it as a train for thought, and maybe try some different builds and home in on what the best build for each archetype is using the information I gave you. And I gave you a lot of it, because we're 3 hours since I started streaming. So that's going to be one lovely podcast for the people that are listening once I put it on the podcast things tomorrow, hopefully. But it's done. So I would like to really thank 17Lands team, specifically Viral Misnomer, who is the Mr. 17Lands and the creator, founder, and the person who holds it all together with the bunch of iron will and duct tape. And of course, to the rest of the team who are working relentlessly to put the set online and make it work as well as it can with the Draft Logs cock-up. And I would also like to thank Jake Brown, because he was helping me all through the beginnings, hard beginnings of recording this podcast, and taught me a lot of stuff that I can use to make it better, more accessible, and is generally a good human being that deserves some TLC from time to time. And with that, I'll see you next week, and we'll try to find the best homes for each card in the set at common and uncommon, probably. I'm not going to touch rares yet. Until then, bye-bye.